Well, I'd like to call this meeting of the Richland County Board of Supervisors order at 6:01 p.m. on Tuesday, May 5th, 2026 in our county boardroom. Ask the clerk to do a roll call.
Harrow. Here. Miller. Here. Schoonover.
Here.
Kramer. Here. McKee.
Here.
Engel.
Here.
Meyer.
Here.
Welty. Here. Thompson. Here. Nolan.
Here.
Perry.
Here.
Collins Johnsrud. Here. Turk.
Here.
Waldsmith Tagliapietra. Here. Frank.
Here.
Severson.
Present.
Williamson.
Here.
Cooley.
Here.
McGuire. You have 18 for a quorum, sir.
Thank you, clerk. Agenda item number 4 is verification of open meetings law. Where this meeting properly posted?
It was properly posted in the clerk's office, the bulletin board, and the website, sir.
Thank you. Then I would entertain a motion for County Board Supervisors to approve our 10-point agenda. Motion by Supervisor McKee, seconded by Supervisor Kramer. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Say nay. Motion carries. Moving on to agenda item number 6, discussion on the creation of the countywide ambulance system. And then agenda item number 7 is also discussion on the future of the Richland County ambulance service. So agenda item number 6, I'm going to turn the floor over to Administrator Clements.
Chair. Chair. Did you skip item number 3?
Oh, I did. Sorry. No, I'm not anti-American, but please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. So Supervisor Meyer, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, I was getting ahead of myself, I guess. I'm going to turn the floor over to Administrator Clements to give this presentation. I would like to remind the audience and supervisors in this room that if you are talking side talk, that it is okay. However, the people online, it's going to be harder for them to hear that, the discussion that we're having, because it does pick up your voices. So if you can, just kind of be ultra quiet, or if you need to have a bigger one, you can just step out of the room. I'm not going to prohibit that, but just kind of keep it at smaller so the people that are online are able to hear that. So Administrator Clements, the floor is yours.
All right. So I want to start out by doing a couple of introductions first. For those that don't know me, I'm the County Administrator, Tricia Clements. To my right is Andy Phillips. He is the attorney through Wisconsin Counties Association, and he has been working with the county throughout the whole situation with the ambulance that started last fall. Then we have Dana Scheckler, and he is with Strategic Management and Consulting. He is the one who did the study for us, and he will be talking more about his recommendations and options later. And then last, we have James Small. He is with the Rural EMS Outreach Program Manager with the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Public Health from the Wisconsin Office of Rural Health. So thank you for being here. He really is an expert across the state about rural EMS and will be here to answer your questions. And then finally, we have Leanna Pick at the end down there, who is our finance director, and she will be giving presentations about the finances, about some future projections, and also looking at what would a countywide levy look like for the residents of Richland County. So I'm going to start the slideshow. So tonight we're going to talk about the overview of the Richland Ambulance Service. We're going to talk about countywide emergency medical services. We're going to go over the study results, and then we're going to go over next steps. First, the overview of Richland EMS, and it'll talk about the history, who we serve, the staffing, and the financials. So I'm going to start with history. One thing that I want to remind supervisors of before we start, the goal of this meeting is to be able to provide you as much information as possible so that a decision can be made at the May 19th full county board meeting. As questions come up, please interrupt, please ask them right away. I'm okay with that. I want to make sure all of your questions are answered tonight, so feel free to interrupt as needed. And there are two questions that will need to be answered. The first one is, should the county continue to run the ambulance service? And the second question is, should the county create a countywide emergency medical services and levy outside of the levy limits? So those are the two questions that need to be answered that will be on the May 19th agenda. So I'm going to give just a brief history, and there was some information in the packet for a document there, but I'm going to just give a little bit of brief history. First, in 1965, the federal government prioritized funding to ensure appropriate emergency response across the country. In 1968, Wisconsin responded to that initiative and started to offer funding to local communities to support implementation. That led to Casanova and Lone Rock creating their local EMS services in 1969. And then in 1971, Richland County hired an ambulance coordinator to attempt to organize EMS efforts throughout the county. And then in 1972, Richland County Emergency Management Service was created. Over the years, then many other services were created throughout the county. And at that time, things were maintaining status quo for several years. In 2013, the state stepped in Richland County because we had an issue with not being able to respond to calls. At that time, resolution number 1447 passed, and what that did was created a temporary committee to study the future of the service. At that time, two different options were placed on the table. One option was to hire full-time staff and continue providing the service, and the second option was to go with a third-party provider. At that time, then, the decision was made to hire full-time staff, as prior to that, most of the staff that responded to ambulance calls were volunteers. Resolution number 14-149 was adopted, and at that time allowed for the creation of paid positions, set up a segregated fund that continues to today for the ambulance service, and then created a joint ambulance committee. The next major milestone for the service was in 2022, when the ambulance service moved into their own building. And then in 2025, the county found that status quo was no longer sustainable. For those of you who were on the board last year, you may recall there was a long process to get a contract with the municipalities. We had to increase our rates because we couldn't afford to continue the service without additional funds from the municipalities. And the municipalities at that time and into this year, we're paying on a per call rate. So there was an average of the previous 4 years, and that's how we bill the municipalities. For the municipalities and the county agreed to a 1-year contract with the goal that we would all get together and see what we could accomplish for moving forward to have a service that was sustainable. And so that's where we are right at this point in time. The next thing that I want to talk about, and I'm going to turn this over to Andy, this is statutes that are out there related to the ambulance service.
All right, thank you, Administrator Clements. As she mentioned, I am a lawyer that represents the Counties Association in several counties all around the state. I think in some form or fashion, I've represented 71 of the 72 counties. Whoever figures out the one county I've not represented gets a gold star. You can tell me after the meeting. I represent Florence. I do work with Florence County. This is an issue that is not unique to Richland County. I want to make that clear. This is an issue that many counties are grappling with in how do we most efficiently and effectively provide EMS throughout our county when we have essentially a patchwork of different systems in place now. I don't think anybody has figured this out, and if anybody tells you they figured it out, I don't think they're being truthful, because I have been in many counties where they're having a similar discussion to what Richland County is having this evening. I want to start with establishing the foundation for what is required versus what is wanted. There's a difference between must, shall, and may, and I want to make that clear. If we look at State Statute 60.565 as it relates to ambulance service, a town has a legal obligation to provide directly or contract with an entity to provide EMS services. So under 60.565, a town has an obligation. If we look at cities and villages, that's chapter 1 and chapter 62, the legislature, for whatever reason, used the word may. So a city or a village has discretionary authority to provide ambulance or EMS service. And then we get to county, 59.54 sub 1. Again, the legislature used the word may. So the only municipal entity in the state with a statutory obligation to provide EMS is a town. And we can say that's right, wrong, or indifferent, different opinions there. I'm just telling you what the law says, okay? The situation we're dealing with in Richland County is complex because we're dealing with cities, villages, towns, and county. Out of those four, only one has a statutory obligation to provide EMS, and the other three are trying to figure out how do we best support one another so that as a county, we know that when an ambulance is called, it's going to arrive. So again, foundationally, just wanted to have a clear understanding of who has what responsibility according to our current statutes.
So I want to go over who it is that the Richland EMS serves. We do all are part of the towns of Aiken, Dayton, Eagle, Henrietta, Ithaca, Marshall, Orion, Richland, Rockbridge, and Willow, Village of Boaz, and the city of Richland Center. I want to make note when I say all are part of, I know that Orion and Eagle go to a couple of different entities. So that's where, so there are some that are going to getting their services from multiple different services. We do not serve the towns of Bloom, Buena Vista, Forest, Richwood, Sylvan, Westford, and Forest. And we also do not serve the villages of Cazenovia, Lone Rock, Viola, and Yuba. And here is a map of the different services that are throughout the county. One thing that I do want to make note of is this map is not updated for Yuba. Yuba is served by Hillsborough, and I do not have an updated map for that, but there's a little area around Yuba where Hillsborough is served.
And Richland County EMS covers the red portion on that map, the center portion, the red.
And so that is about 10,000 people throughout the county. I would say it's about 60% of the area is what we serve. I also want to go over, in 2025, our service had 1,386 calls. The year before that was 1,131 calls. 2023 was 1,228 calls. In the first quarter of 2026, it was about 286. There might be some more that have been added, but the most recent numbers that I had showed that. And then let's talk about the staffing of Richland EMS. We have a service director. Right now we have an interim service director, and which has been very nice to have because there's been so much uncertainty in the future of the service. And the previous service director left, we went with an interim, and that has been in play until we know what the next steps are. If on May 19th, it's determined that we will continue our service, on May 20th, we will be posting that service director position. We have one captain position, one administrative secretary. The administrative secretary is a contracted position. It is not a county position. And again, that is one that was built into the budget for 2026 to be a county position, but because we weren't sure of what the future of the service would be, we left it as contracted. So that will be one also that we will work to become a county position. And on May 19th, we will work to follow those steps to do that. We have 5 full-time EMTs or AEMTs. We are an AEMT service. So on every truck, there needs to be at least one AEMT. We currently have 9 on-call staff and 7 part-time casual staff. Are there any questions on anything we've talked about thus far? I think a couple other things that I just want to add while I'm reviewing my notes. We run 1 full-time ambulance 24/7, 365 days a year. There are times that a second ambulance is in service for either a transfer or because it's needed in the community for 911. Our staff have recently formed a union and we will be starting the union negotiations for the contract, I would presume in the next month or two. And I also want to say that the staff that we have are amazing. They are very dedicated. They are great staff. And I just really want to stress that all of these discussions are not happening because we don't have good staff. All of these discussions are happening because we need to find a way to have a sustainable service in the long run, not just in the next 60 days, 90 days, year, 2 years. It really is about how do we have a sustainable service in the long run. So next I'm going to pass it over to Leanna, and she is going to share the financials. She's going to talk about the past financials, the present, and the future. So I will stop sharing. Yeah.
Going back, you asked if there was any questions to the thing. So where it said the areas we do not serve, do we back them up? at all?
Yes, and they also back us up. So there are mutual aid agreements with all of them.
So it's not like we just don't serve them all together. We do back them.
Yes, if they request it, we do back them up, but I think they also have, and I guess I'm getting some looks in the gallery.
Define serve, Richland EMS is not contracted, they're not obligated, they don't serve these outlying areas. We have mutual aid agreements between each service around us that if there is a need, that an ambulance is not available, an ambulance will respond from another area, but there's not a formal service agreement to serve those municipalities.
Jeff, do you just want to introduce yourself?
I'm Jeff Even, I am village president for Casanova and service director for Cas EMS.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to speak here tonight. For those that don't know me, I'm Leanna Pick, the finance director for Richland County. This is about the fourth time I've kind of given this little presentation to either executive, finance, or county board. So I have updated what you see here. Hopefully you can see it. I try to make it a little bit bigger here. Hopefully that helps. So this is our balance sheet. It was updated as of 4/30/2026. So what I'll walk through first is kind of where we're at right now as we've started the year. Then I'll go on to the comparison and I'll turn it back over to administrator then, and then we'll go through the other scenarios after that. So as we are starting this year, we have a claim on cash. So claim on cash is essentially our checkbook for the ambulance service. It is negative because right now the ambulance service currently owes the operating account $297,000. If this was positive, the operating account would owe the ambulance service. And the reason being because we have a large chunk of accounts receivable. Accounts receivable are not cash yet. They're things we are waiting to turn into cash once we collect on them. So we have $475,664, which a lot of that carried over from the previous year. And then down here is this lovely negative $200,000, which is the write-off that the auditors booked at the end of 2024. So what happens at the end of every year is that our auditors come through and the auditors look at our receivables and they determine based on history and past performance, how much we could reasonably expect to collect from that if we have not collected already. So they said, based on your receivables at the end of last year, there's 200,000 of those receivables that will more than likely be written off, not collected. So what we do is we just net those against our outstanding AR balance. And so our true, what we could possibly expect to still collect would be 275,000, which that would clear most of our deficit to the operating cash, but not all of it. So that would still leave us with a $22,000 deficit within the assets that would be owed to the operating account. Liabilities, and this is just current liabilities, accounts payable pending, some retirement payable. So these are just as they're waiting to be paid, or if we've overpaid, it's waiting for a correction to be done, like in health insurance. Sometimes there's corrections and they cross periods. The one thing we want to look at is our equity. So this is what we have built up in the ambulance service for all time. So this is a balance that just keeps rolling, plus or minus, up, down, you know. So right now, at the end of last year, that balance was sitting at $77,000. But what we have to consider is that this fund balance is going to change. When our audit is starting next week, they will be on site. And when they are, they will analyze our accounts receivables from 2025, and they'll say, okay, what you have out there, we believe another 150,000 may be uncollectible. So that 200,000 we saw up above is gonna get bigger, and the accounts receivable, then the net that we're gonna be able to collect is gonna get smaller. And then this fund balance, likewise, is going to more than likely flip negative. So that means that we will have no equity left once audit is completed for 2025. That is what I am somewhat predicting based on what I've seen in history. But again, only the audit will be able to tell that for sure. So then what the system does is it says, so far this year, from January to April, you've collected 296,000 in additional revenue. You've spent 423,000. And so we are already upside down another $127,000. So the system, Tyler, says, well, if your equity balance is 77,000, less that 127,000 is going to leave you again with a negative deficit of 49,000 before any 2025 audit entry is made. So again, expecting that to go quite a bit to the negative when it comes to the equity balance once audit is completed. Any questions on that? So claim on cash, this number here just ties back to what I showed you on the first sheet up here at the top here, claim on cash. So you can see where it comes from. And that's made up of your beginning negative cash balance. And then all the deposits that we've taken in year to date, January through April, all of what we paid out through AP and what we paid out through payroll, and then some journal entry reclass. The biggest one in here was there was 54,000 that was miscoded to ambulance that actually belonged to Pine Valley, so that was reclassed with a journal entry. So that's how we get to our 297 that you saw on the balance sheet. And then we can look at the details for 2026. So what you can see is we took in 80,000 in January in revenue, 147,000 in February. We dropped for March and April, but that I believe is primarily because we switched service providers. We switched billing companies mid-April. And we have yet to receive the report that we need from them to book the entry for the revenue, the adjustments, and the write-offs. Right now, when I looked at it, I can see it somewhat out there, and I've contacted the company and they said that those are usually available about the 5th through the 7th. I looked today, it wasn't out there yet, but I'd expect to have that by early next week to be able to update these numbers for you so you'll know a true where we're at with the new service through April. So with that missing revenue, right now, what they show out there is about 115,000 of revenue, but they're missing the adjustment and write-off piece. So that's why that's not booked yet. So you can see our total for the year, 296. That ties back to what I showed you on the first statement, the balance sheet. I'm giving you our budget here, 1.3 for the year. So we got about $1 million left, or about 77%. So through Q1, that seems kind of realistic to me. And then you look at what your year-to-date budget should be. That's 435 that we probably should have brought in. So again, our 296, I might as well say 300,000 plus that other 115 that's hanging out there that we haven't booked yet is going to get you pretty close to your 435. So I think in terms of revenue, that's probably going to end up looking okay. not too much of an over under once that entry is booked in here for March and April, okay? And then in terms of expenses, I did add an over under based on budget here. So if it's red, it's over budget kind of year to date. And if it's green, it's trending under budget. The biggest one I saw is kind of over budget is overtime. So just a little bit to watch on that and make sure that we're keeping that overtime as much in check as we can, especially if, as Administrator Clemens mentioned, that our call volumes are down year over year. So we'd kind of expect that our overtime then should probably follow that. And then this is just, again, the rest of the expenses that it takes to run a fully staffed ambulance service with a facility. This is that for the year. So bottom line here, 423,000 there that we've spent in expenses. You can see January was kind of high in the expenses. A lot of that driven from, had a large write-off in January, kind of went down a little bit in February, March, and we don't know really April yet. So that's a line. This is direct write-off from the company. So they're doing their billing and they're just saying right off the bat, we're not going to collect this amount.
And
So-
why is that?
It really-
I'm just, just writing off everything. I understand that, Medicare writes off a certain amount because they only get paid a certain amount. But it seems like we're writing off a lot of money that we should be able to be collecting.
Well, from what I understand of it, it is that Medicare piece that comes off right off the top.
That I totally understand. That's
Yeah,
always been.
so if we recorded $1,000 to somebody, they're automatically gonna take, anywhere from 20 to 30% off of that. But if we only billed 500, they would do the same thing.
I don't understand this auditor that comes in and says, well, we're not gonna collect this, we're just gonna write it off. I don't believe in that.
Jane,
Okay, well.
What?
stay silent here.
Huh?
Be quiet for right now.
James and Dana, can you guys respond
Yeah,
to
maybe
that
you
one
could
too?
So what you're seeing here in their accounting is a write down that goes with Medicare and Medicaid. That's not an option.
That I understand.
And that's
That's
not
always been.
collectible. So you can bill $1,500 on the call, but what's the billing rate this year? Like $416 plus mileage, something like that for Medicare? Yeah, so you might bill $1,500, you might see $500 from that call.
Correct.
So what I'm seeing here in the budget is they're budgeting to have about a 60% collection rate overall.
Yes, that's
am I-
correct.
For Medicare, Medicaid.
Total overall, because your Medicare and Medicaid in particular is lower than Medicare in reimbursement.
Correct. But now that should be going up, what the state says. They're gonna be.
Well, kind of, it depends, and I couldn't predict how that's gonna land here. There's so many moving parts to that program.
Right now, but they say that should be increasing.
It's possible, but, one of the things to keep in mind too is that just all these programs are in flux right now. So some of the Medicare reimbursement, Medicaid for sure is in flux, especially over the next 5 years or so. So how this stuff goes over the next 5 years, nobody really knows.
But I guess what I do not understand the other part being written off. I know Medicare and that's.
I don't think that's what you're
That-
referring
that's
to,
not-
right? You're not referring
There's
to-
two different write-offs. So there's
Right.
the direct write-off, which is what you're seeing here, that happens right up front. And then there is what the auditors do at the end of the year, which is reviewing your accounts receivable, your accounts receivable for collectability. So as more time goes past with a bill, it is less and less likely that you will collect it. Even the best collection agencies may not get that money. It's like getting water from a stone, right? So if they just don't have it, they don't have it. So this is the dilemma that so many of us face when it comes to this type of a service. Hospitals face it as well. If they, again, carry a lot of Medicare, Medicaid, what you need is those external transports that are gonna be billing like at full insurance rates, healthy, I guess not healthy people, but maybe people who are not to the Medicare, Medicaid, age that have other insurance, private insurances tend to pay more. So what this tells me is that we're looking at a mix issue, right? But I don't know that there's anywhere to change that mix, like in a company, they would typically say like, I heard recently like Costco, why do they sell their chickens so cheap? Their rotisserie chickens. Well, they know if they get you in the store, you're gonna buy more. And you're gonna buy some of those high priced items, the ones that sell at that bigger margin. So when they do, and you net those together, that's where you're coming out profitable. But we don't really have that sort of really high profitable mix that we can add to the Medicare, Medicaid mix, you know, to get us to anything. We're not supposed to break a profit, but we should at least be trying to break even, but we don't have that luxury. That makes sense.
We've always had those write-offs in the
Right,
past.
yeah.
We've always,
They've always-
That part I understand, it's the other part writing off. I always know about the other being written off, but when your auditor comes in and says, you know, we're not gonna be able to ever collect this other, and we're writing that off,
And
then
it's-
I find a little,
It's been historically true. So when I came in August and I reviewed this for the first time, one of the things, I don't know if anybody recalls that, but the reason you see all of these other years out here is because we had stuff hanging out here expecting to collect it and it never moved. It didn't go anywhere. So the fact that it didn't go anywhere meant that the auditors were right. We ended up writing it all off against their allowance that they had created. So history is telling us that we just haven't collected it. So there's two write-offs. There's the direct write-off right away, and then there's the auditing write-off that happens at the end of the year that says, based on what you've got in your history, we don't believe you're gonna collect this. Okay? All right.
It might be helpful too on that first one, maybe rename that, the technical word for Medicare, Medicaid is accepting assignment.
correct, yes.
So.
And that
it might
we
help,
understand.
And that's different than the write-offs. The write-offs, what the auditors are saying, you probably won't find. Accepting assignment is, I have the numbers here. So if you look at, whatever you bill, it doesn't matter what you bill for this past for 2025. If you bill an ALS, emergency rate, you will get paid back, $524.
Mhm.
And so if you bill 1,000, the accepting assignment is the, whatever that number is, $405. Medicaid is worse. Medicaid,
Oh, yeah.
you're only gonna get $441 out of that, say, if you bill it.
And those ones I do totally understand.
supervisor,
So I think my understanding of this is that the service goes and picks somebody up, whether it's a car accident or a medical emergency, and they don't pay their bill. That's what's getting written off. This isn't a Medicare, the other side isn't Medicare, it's the person didn't pay the bill, the insurance didn't pay the bill. Is that what we're talking about? It's the other side?
I think it's still a mix of those because there's still a portion that can be left that's patient responsibility at the end of Medicare, Medicaid. And that part will be written off if they can't pay as well. So I wouldn't say that it's necessarily just the person that gets in an accident, you know, but.
A part of it.
Yeah, it's a part of it. It's a mix of them. We could analyze them further and see, you know, who's all in there. And when it comes down to private pay, I mean, how many people have a deductible and your deductible is 3,000 or 5,000 or 10,000? How many people have that kind of money sitting around? So most of the time that will end up just being uncollectible. It's the sad truth of the world we currently live in.
So the way I understand it though is we can bill the patient. Medicare comes back and says, we're gonna give you this XX amount. If they're on Medicare or Medicaid, I believe that we cannot go back on that consumer then and ask for that money back. However, if you have private insurance and have not at the age threshold or on Medicare or Medicaid, then we are able to go and ask for that back through billing. And then it's on us then to keep following up with that for billing. And then we have the opportunity then to go to collections, I believe.
Then it takes a percentage,
It does.
Yeah.
big percentage.
So there's a process, but yeah.
So where
In
is
the report, there's an option of participating with TRIP, the Tax Refund Intercept Program. That's a state-provided, in essence, collection agency, and that costs the service nothing.
And I believe that we're kind of utilizing that already.
Using that, perfect. That's the,
Our current billing company is now doing that, our previous was.
okay. That's a great improvement.
Okay.
I got a question. I'm a little bit confused on this. When it comes to a fire call, all right, I don't care if you're 5 years old, 100 years old, you get a bill. If we don't collect in the township, we automatically turn it over to the property tax bill. How is ambulance being charged out? I'm a little bit lost on that.
It's federal that you can't tax or have Medicare or Medicaid patients pay. That's a federal law. You can't do that.
For health.
Fire is different, though. You can be able to do that, but federal law says if you're a Medicare, Medicaid patient, and you are the consumer of this, and we're gonna give you this amount, and we can't go and collect that. That's why I was mentioning that if you have private insurance, then we are able to do that, and we do that, correct? Right? We do
We do.
go after that, but federal law says that we cannot. That's why there's so many write-offs. Supervisor McKee?
I got a question. Medicare. And I have a supplement. Can you collect from the supplement?
Turn that in, yes.
Yep,
Okay.
But it doesn't cover the Medicare write-off. They only pay to the Medicare rate.
correct.
Right.
Because I have Medicare.
Supervisor Collins Johnsrud?
I have a question. Okay, so if these insurance companies are not paying or the person's not paying who has insurance, what are our steps? What is the process? Why aren't we following through with that process to get the money? I mean, how long has this been that we're not
I
collecting?
mean, that would be a question, I believe, for the services, our billing companies, and we have now switched billing companies 3 times. In the last,
3 years.
3 years? Yep, one new one every year. So, and then once we leave them, we don't see any of the AR, or very little of the AR that they had coming back into us either. So I think a lot of it depends on what they're doing, and what I had heard from the last one is that they would try like 2 times, and then after that, they were done in trying to collect the safeties.
And that's.
She's nodding
along
along.
with them.
Yes.
That's on us to make sure that we're following through with that billing company. That comes on the county then. That we're following through with that billing company to make sure that we are going out there and actually collecting and making sure that they're doing that. So that's kind of,
But I think it's important to remember, you can't get blood from a turnip, like Leanna said. So even if we aggressively go after them, if they don't have anything to give, we can't give anything. So I think that's the first thing to really remember there. And I think second thing is, and if James and Dana can address this, these are pretty typical numbers for services across the state.
Yes, in general, they're pretty typical numbers. I will say for Richland County, what you're talking about is called the payer mix. The payer mix is the combination of Medicare, Medicaid, commercial insurance, and private pay. And as you brought up, those that have the high deductibles tend to go into that private pay category. In Richland County, you guys have a much more higher payer mix of Medicare, Medicaid than most other counties. So even if you go back and say, we're going to go back and be as aggressive as we can, which I think you should through your insurance company or through your billing company, you may only have 10% of all your patients actually be commercial. And so that 10%, even if you collected 100% of that 10%, that's not going to offset all your accepting assignment and write-offs for your Medicare and your Medicaid recipients. It's just, we were working with one entity, they were at, on a good day, they were at 93% Medicare, Medicaid. I said, that's horrible. What's a bad day? They said 97%. So, and it's just the reality of EMS across the state.
And if I could just, I'm Nathan Russell, Corporation Counsel, but one of my other parts of my practice is we do collections for medical companies. And we roughly do 130 small claims cases a month in Wisconsin and Illinois. If any person is getting any type of public assistance at all, they're not collectible. You can't get it from them. And if the person doesn't own real estate, you can't get a lien against their property. So you're diminishing the amounts of capability. We talked about, I don't know if I use blood from a turnip, you said water from a stone, but that's the same concept. And so I can only speak, I'm new here, but from a collection standpoint, I've been doing it a long time. And even if you're getting free and reduced lunch, you are exempt. And so it is across the board, and given the demographics that we're dealing with in this particular county, it shrinks up your collectability. And whoever mentioned it about the percentages, those percentages go to people like me to win. It's not to you all. I say that with a smirk on my face. It's just the truth. And so even if you shrink up some of that, that's not going to be the numbers that you're looking for. I got no skin in this game. I'm just telling you from an attorney who does collections pretty aggressively on a medical side, that's what we're dealing with on a daily basis. Sorry to interject.
Thank you.
so at one point in time, Richland County did do their own billing for ambulance service. And they did do that, and it worked good. What we found, why we went with the billing company, was that there's all these little intricate details that our medical providers are doing that Medicare says we could bill for. And that person had knowledge of the other stuff, but didn't know that, hey, maybe we can charge a little bit more for just using this nasal cannula or using a set of gloves. And so that's why I went to that billing company, because they were able to collect more money from that consumer. So we switched that company probably back in 2019.
At least, yeah.
It was before that, because
Yep.
it was, I remember when we did that with the JAC, that was part of that. And it switched and it worked great for the first
2-3 years.
2 years, 3 years. And then COVID, I think once COVID hit, that's when everything went to and the company no longer
Right.
kept up with the billing.
And that was a company issue at that point in time. And we decided to switch to one company and then.
Well, it sounds like we haven't gotten any better at it since we left.
Correct.
And I think that's important to remember what our collectible rate is consistent regardless of what provider we have for our billing company, and it's consistent across the state. So we could switch every 6 months and we're probably going to end up with those same numbers. You know, I think the current billing company we have, we are very optimistic that they're going to be a little more aggressive, but they're not going to make or break the budget.
And we've worked with entities who have switched for whatever reasons. Whatever your billing company tells you, oh, don't worry, we'll submit the bill and within 30 days, you'll get your first payment. I've never seen that. I see usually a 6-month delay lifetime for the first payment. That doesn't mean you're collecting everything. I'm saying it's 6 months, 7 months, 8, 9 months. So even though you said you might get some more this next month, I wouldn't count on that till the end of the summer. It'll be that long. It's just a lifetime.
And I think we saw that the last time that we switched, there was a lag before we got the reports that actually went back and told us, you know, what we had collected.
Leanne, you can finish your report.
Okay. Yep, so that's kind of where we are currently, versus the year-to-date budget. I also have the,
Can I ask a quick question, Lorna? You're talking about the current budget. As you've been going through all of this and working through this, are you seeing areas that we can cut the budget?
Oof. The only area I think I pointed out was a little bit in terms of the overtime, being a little on the high side, but other than that, you know, you kind of look for those flexible buckets, consumables, but I don't think I really saw it in the, let's see, where's my medical supplies and my equipment? Yeah. I mean, everything, you know, is pretty green there. We're doing pretty good. Yeah. I didn't really see anything that could be other than just try to control your overtime. They've operated pretty well. And I think you'll see that in the comparison when we look at it here. So the year over year. So I know some people have seen this already, but I did go back to 2019 and I pulled in the numbers from 2019 to kind of show us where we've been and, you know, where we're heading. So you can see how the revenues have increased kind of year over year. I highlighted 23 through 26. 23 is the year that we actually moved to a building and we got a full-time staff. So when you're looking at the numbers, there's some changes that happened when we go and we made that switch. And you can see that down here where the utilities suddenly, you know, you've got a whole building now that you've got to take care of in terms of utilities. And let's see what else. We've got our staffing changes, so that, you know, also increased, you know, many
So-
times over here.
That building though was purchased in 2022 or 2021, somewhere in there, Brian. I don't know if you.
Right after, 2020, right after that, yeah.
So before that, the ambulance was housed right here at this facility downstairs. And that's where people stayed at and everything. So an increase there is because we did acquire a new building and took over the utilities then. So it was an added.
And yeah, obviously, like most things, as we all know, all types of consumables are going up in price, so you can see those increases rather, heftily year over year in terms of medical supplies. We've got kind of an aged fleet of ambulances, so you can kind of see that happening in the maintenance and stuff as we're going across here. So everything that they have spent on, every detail, so the devil's in the details, you've got all the details. You got everything that I know, and that we know up here in finance. Claims clearinghouse, this is the actual invoices come in here. So this is what the billing companies are charging us for their services. Whether it's Unified or EMS, MC, or I think they were called Civicoda. Okay. Before, so those are all in there. You can see contract services, this one was some construction that we had done in 24 for 37,000. So that's just why I highlighted it, kind of stuck out. And then when we talked about ambulance, we did in 2023, there was a transfer to the ambulance fund of 40,000 so that they could purchase a new ambulance or newer ambulance, I should say, not brand new. But you can see down here where we have been, so you might have had slight, surpluses here in these years. I wouldn't say, 2020 looked pretty good, 2021 pretty good there, but then we get into some of these heavier write-off years, get revenues going up, but also uncollectability is gonna go up because of that. And I think 2023 was one of the first years that we saw that really big hit from that. And 2025, this is the one recorded for the previous year, so. And then we go on to our fund balance, which you saw already, and that's again.
Supervisor Welty?
Yeah.
Based on the numbers from the past years that you've reviewed and what we've experienced thus far in 26, has the forecast been prepared for the financial outlook for the full 2026?
I didn't prepare it yet. I could walk it out for you. I tried to do just a little bit here and what we would need in terms of forecasting it out for the next, the original versus the next 8 months. Just kind of taking what we've spent and extrapolating it out. So I didn't do beyond that. We could put together a forecast on a monthly basis, for what we expect overtime to be. We got, we know what salaries run, so we can put that in there. We can do some averages. So that could easily be put together. In some of my levy analysis, I did, not gonna go into it yet, but I did walk it out from the 3-year, these 3 years, the 3-year average to 2026 budget, and then so on and so forth. But we'll get to that in the next segment.
As you were digging through 2019 to present, have you found any mismanagement of the funds?
No.
Have you been able to track all of the money?
Yes, I have. And I was able to tie out all of the revenue streams, the deposits, all of the cash that we've done. I looked at that and tied all of that out as well. So I feel fairly comfortable with the numbers that we have, and that there wasn't any, transfers to and from general fund other than if we had to do like we did in the case of the new ambulance fund. But other than that, no.
Supervisor Carroll?
As far as this 3-year average we're looking at, I'm seeing where in 2025, looks like there was a step change in revenues and expenses, and maybe a 3-year average is not the best way to project on out. And I'm just wondering, is that a 1-year one-off thing, or is that a new normal in 2025? And maybe that's really the main number to use for projecting on out.
What do you mean by a step change? But
Well, I'm just saying it was a big jump. It's like a 20% bump over 2020.
in terms of revenue, I believe we changed our prices, didn't we, in terms of what we were
That,
charging?
not until 26.
Not until 26.
The call volume did increase in 2025. There was probably 200 more calls than the year prior.
Okay.
So that could be part of it. The expenses went up, the salaries, there was a bump in salaries in 2025. But as you recall, there was a new wage scale that all employees were put on, and the ambulance employees got a big jump, much deserved. But some of their wages went up, like For an EMT, it went from 1605 to 1944, and for the AEMT, it went from 1954 to 2153. So we
Kind of confirms what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Instead of just a 3-year average, maybe we just project off of what the 2025 results were.
okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. And I believe you'll see that in the next one. I just used the 2026 budget to go forward, not knowing again where we're gonna end 2026 and not totally having 2025 audited and secured yet, you know, so you could do either way. But the reason we have to do that again, when you look at salaries, 2024, the entire salaries and benefits was 544,000. And in 2025, that went up to 679,000. And in government, as you all know, we have to balance our budget. So if we have 1.3 million in operating expenses, we have to have 1.3 million in revenue to balance the budget. So I can't put the deficit on the bottom line, and I can't put a surplus on the bottom line saying we're gonna make profit. It's just not allowed in governmental accounting. So I think that might be some of the driver of why you saw that revenue being so high, because I had that sort of same question, how we go from 900,000 to like 1.3 million in just a year. You know, what is our driving factor there? And I was not here to put together the 2026 budget. I came in right as it was being released to all of you. So, but I will get the chance this year to put my information and my stamp on that budget as well and go through line by line, bucket by bucket, and we'll question, you know, what we are spending on various items, what makes up all of these budget or buckets as well. So.
You want me to comment on a little bit on your historic here and how that relates to the industry?
Sure, go ahead.
So one of the things in public safety in general is that it's been outpacing, the cost of public safety has been outpacing inflation very substantially going back to about 2012, maybe even earlier than that. So if you look at it on a historical standpoint, it's been about 2 to 3 times the normal inflation rate per year. So I'm just looking at this here relative to the national inflation rate and looking at year over year. This is pretty well in line actually with what we've seen across the industry. So the cost exploded really quickly. This is the bottom line, because an ambulance that was 180 grand or 150 the last time you bought it is now almost 400, right? Your staffing costs have gone up substantially. That's the market you're at. And that's what we've seen too. So even when you're seeing a year that might have, I forget what, there's one year in there that's got a 23% hit on it. I've seen that before in other places in these same timelines. So that's not, you're not experiencing anything different. It just, it puts the local governments in a really tough spot because they say you can increase it this much and you need to increase it this much, right? So you're in this place where you're stuck. The thing we don't know is what happens going forward. Like, are we reaching this point where it kind of reached the peak of the mountain and now it'll level off again for a while like it did years ago? Or is it going to keep going? And we don't know. That's something we tell looking backwards on it. We don't know what future looks like.
You will just say your name and stuff for people online and we were.
Yeah, I'm James Small. I'm the Rural EMS Outreach Program Manager at Wisconsin Office of Rural Health.
So that was James Small that was speaking there.
Yeah, but we've seen 2 to 3 times inflation. It's been really, really common in this space.
All right. Do you want me to go on to the next part? You've got more that you want to say, or do you want me to go into the levy analysis and?
Probably not levy analysis now.
Okay.
We'll hold off on that. But did you want to do projection? Should we just do it all later?
I think that's part of it, is
Alright.
the projecting.
Okay. So we'll go back to the slideshow. So the next thing we're going to start talking about is the countywide emergency medical services. And I'm going to be leaning on James a lot to help with this discussion. So with the countywide emergency medical services and the local levy limits exceptions, Wisconsin State Statute 66.0602 sub 3 sub E sub 6 allows counties to levy outside of the levy limit for a countywide emergency medical system. So this is a authority that only the counties have. Towns, villages, and cities do not have this authority. And James, if you want to kind of take over and talk about what does it mean to have a county-wide emergency medical service?
Well, there's no definition of it. And that's what makes this hard. So I'm currently working with 7 counties on potentially adopting countywide levies for purposes of their EMS. What makes up a countywide EMS system is kind of what the county board says it is. It needs to be countywide. So all your parcels in your county are going to be taxed on this. You can't just do a portion of the county, and you can't just provide the service to a portion of the county. One of the things, just going through your financials, when you're running a deficit and that's coming from your fund balance, that means people outside this service area are already paying tax on it. Does that make sense? When you run a couple $100,000 deficit, that money came from somewhere. And it's not just from the townships that are paying those extra fees, it's going to everybody. So you're already kind of doing this, but doing it within a limited levy. And everybody's not benefiting from it. But there has been some counties that did that, had a similar service, and then adopted a countywide levy and only provided the service within that service area. That's not okay. There is counties that same county now has a countywide levy and provides a per capita payment to the other townships that are not getting service from that. So there's funding going up. But the sky's really the limit on what the county board wants to do with adopting a levy and how they want to administer it. I think it's a lot more complicated than just saying, we're going to adopt $1 million levy and let's just dole the money out to the towns and let them figure it out. I wouldn't do that. There is a county that uses a stipend system like that. And what they've managed to do is spend a lot more money to get all the same problems still exist in their system. So there has to be some thought to this on what those expectations are and how this works. I don't know what's good for you here. That's one of the things I tell everybody I sit in front of, because commonly I'll be asked, well, what should we do? I don't know. That's why you're elected, and you have to make these hard decisions on what's best for the community. And it may be that, does a levy make sense? It's a tool that you have. You have a serious problem here in the county. But this is a, rural counties are a very challenging place. You have a demographic that's aging, right? You have a demographic. I was looking at some of your, when we were having the Medicare, Medicaid discussion, your poverty rate's about 40% higher than the state average. So you have an aging population that's poor. Okay, that's a challenge just on itself because of all the other things that come with that. And a lot of that ends up leaning on the government services to make sure that people are healthy and so on. So, figuring out what this needs to look like, that's why you have people like Dana that start putting options in front of you, because handing you a blank sheet of paper that says, figure it out, this is a really complex service to provide. Just making an ambulance call happen, there's like over 100 moving parts in that to make that call go off. So on its face, it looks pretty straightforward, right? Somebody calls 911, ambulance goes to the call. Really, really complicated. And most of our local governments, particularly in rural areas, are used to contracting to have a snowplow come. Well, that snowplow comes 20 minutes late, nobody notices, right? Or an hour late, usually nobody notices. Or your garbage collection that you contract for, you don't really care when it shows up. But when you call an ambulance, you want to know, one, that it's actually going to show up, and two, that it does it promptly. So just a different animal here. And it's each county, there's 14 counties currently using a levy out of the 72. There's 7 that I'm working with on levies. And then I know in addition to that, there's several others that I'm not working with that are looking at doing levies either in 2027 or 2028. But I think when you do a levy, you need to build accountability into it. If you're going to tax people more, they have a right to know where that money went and what it was spent on. I think you did a great job at showing that here tonight, and the historical expenses that this money being spent for what it's intended for. It's just not enough, right? And it's not enough from a countywide basis. I would venture that most of your areas of your county are underfunded at this point, and the local governments don't have that tool to increase that. Short of doing a referendum, vote of electors, things like that. So it really puts a lot on your shoulders potentially to look at this and decide either yes or no, we want to do it. And then if the answer is yes, what does that look like and how much? And what is that tax impact? That's what you got him for. He can help you with some of those answers too. But I know about every way there is to put ambulances on the street, but I don't know what's good for you. That's a decision you guys have to make.
Did you say our poverty rate is 40% higher than other counties?
Yeah, it's like almost 15% here, and statewide average is just over 10.
Supervisor McKee?
I've got a question. If you did a countywide levy, is there a mechanism counties pay the townships that already have EMS?
So that is, that is part of what we, that's part of what we would need to do is, and that's information we have gathered, is of how much each of the different municipalities are paying for ambulance service. And then that is something that would then, instead of being out of the town's budgets or the village's budget or the city's budget, would then be outside of the levy limit, and then we would distribute that to the services.
I don't think it can go to the towns. I don't think it can go to the municipalities. It has to go, if you levied it for EMS, it has to go to that EMS service. Not that, right?
I think go to the town.
Yeah.
You can't. Yeah. I mean, part of the challenge is that we started with, we don't have a definition of countywide. And I think James made the statement, it's kind of what the county board determines. There's been litigation over it and we still don't have clarity on that.
Yeah, there's a
And
curve
so-
of those.
Right, and we don't have clarity. So that's part of the frustration in trying to figure out solutions is that typically when you have a statute that says you can levy above the cap for county-wide emergency medical, you go to the definition section, oh, county-wide, here's the definition. There's no definition. So.
Well, there's only one sentence. You know, in the whole statute book, there's one sentence. The sentence that was up there on the screen a minute ago that's the law.
That's it, that's the entire law.
It originates in the 2011 state budget. So you have this budget document that's hundreds of pages long that has one sentence in there that changed the law and said counties can do this.
So the other end of that, if I could, as we're looking for potential solutions, I'll throw it out there. It's in the report, but we added this in extra kind of as after we started the study, is that the innovation grant, you can look at both sides of it, and I've learned to love and hate it at the same time, right? There's $300 million out there that whether we agree with the way it was promoted or not, it's there, right? And only 56 municipalities in the entire county applied. Of those, a couple were duplicates and a couple are not going to be eligible. So they're going to only approve 45, maybe 50, probably closer to 45. The point is they probably are going to come up with a second round that will be this fall. And it would, you know, when you're balancing a budget, you're looking at, there's only two ways to do it. Increase your revenue, decrease your expenses. This is one of the ways. So whether we agree with the principle or not, it's out there. We matched it out very conservatively. We didn't include all the surrounding other ambulance services. And if you decide to become a county-wide for the whole county, these numbers go up. But so at the minimum conservative, just for what's called Richland County EMS, it's $37,000 base plus another $102,000 when you count for all the volunteer hours. So that's $139,000 that the county would acquire from the state. It's not your local taxpayers. I mean, obviously they get it from tax dollars, but you're not getting it from Richland County residents per se. It's already money that's been delegated. It's been sitting there for the past 3 years. So you would get over 139,000, I think more if we worked with all the communities for the next, you won't be eligible for 5 years, but you certainly get it for at least 4 more years.
But,
Go ahead.
but if the county continues to run the service, we would not be eligible for that.
We're working on some items that we're going to find out between now and then, but I think because if you're including all the other entities, then if you're including it the way it is right now, no. But if you include it where you look at one of the 4 options that are out there, it would potentially make you eligible for at least that 139,000. That's, you know, when you're looking at a deficit, that's going to help offset that. And in 4 years, you got to figure out what are you going to do then, but that's where you politic with your local.
Supervisor McKee?
Yeah, how would that work with, like, for example, Viola? They service part of Richland County and part of Vernon County. And you wouldn't be collecting, from Vernon County
For the innovation grant or for the levy?
for the levy.
You're going to collect your levy based on, well, there's two ways to account for your levy collection. You can do it either by per capita, so the people living in your county. Some entities are looking to do equalized value, because then you're going to capture some revenue from entities that don't normally pay taxes. So entities that are tax exempt or whatever, you're going to be able to collect from them, kind of spread the wealth a little more. You're not going to collect outside the county, but just inside the county. Those are your border parameters.
Okay, but then if the county or whoever pays municipality that serves multiple counties, the Vernon County calls didn't pay tax levy. So would they not get reimbursement for that?
No, like, people really could still be reimbursed. They could still get the money because we would only be providing them what would be needed for Richland County residents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Supervisor Carroll?
One of these notes here, or question comments in the spreadsheet, talks about if we do the levy exemption, that we would only reimburse to those adjacent folks what they currently pay their service providers. I would think we'd reimburse whatever that bump in the levy was. So
There's no requirement that you do that. The county has, as we said, you have one sentence in the law where you can collect from everybody and then utilize that for what's the benefit of all the entities. So if they're only, say their tax levy is only at $25, you could say, you might say, we'll be generous and give you $30. And you're going to still end up having additional funds to help offset your deficit. You can use some of those funds for anything that's EMS related. So I use for the sheriff's office, you have dispatch center, right? When you look at your dispatchers, they provide police, fire, and EMS. So you could logically argue about a third of their time is spent on EMS. So a third of their salaries could be used by this increase in the levy, the benefits, the software, the hardware, the radio system, which is huge, right? You can use that from collectively everybody in the county to help offset. The way it's worded in the levy is it doesn't say ambulance service, it says EMS related expenses.
So we'll have Leanna kind of show you some numbers of what it could look like. Again, this is just one way that we could collect the funds and redistribute them. Ultimately, that's a board decision how you want to do that, but I'll have Leanna start going over some of these numbers.
Okay, thank you. So since we're jumping right into it, so in your packet, you would see levy analysis 1, 2, and 3, and I'll explain what the differences are and how I came up with it. So I did make some assumptions, since the year isn't over yet. Obviously, we're just in a third of 2026. I had to use some amount as my starting point, so I did use our 2026 budget, especially since 25 isn't audited, and costs would be considerably different than 24, which is audited. So I went with the 2026 budget, and basically I assumed revenues would increase 5% year over year. In the first levy analysis, and actually all of them essentially removed this line here in orange, which was what we were getting from the towns in terms of the contract that you had set up this last year and obviously prior years. So I removed that, and that's why you see in 2027 it going to 1.1 million for revenue versus the 1.3 that's in the budget for 2026. It's that missing 230,000 that we've been collecting. So since we were looking at a levy, I thought we'd take that out. And then you'll see kind of where that shows up again at the bottom. And then just each year is increasing 5% on the year previous. So that's what we did for revenue. I also did the same for expenses. There was one thing that will change, currently in the utilities, they split the utilities 85-15 with, emergency management, and they're moving out of that building. And so then the cost of that will obviously just go all to the ambulance service. And so that is built in here as them taking 100% of those utility costs now going forward. And then with some assumptions that I made, so in analysis 1, what I looked at down here is I said, okay, for this one, let's say if we bought 2 brand new ambulances and they're 500,000 each. I just looked out online just to see kind of how much they were going for, and knowing what a plow truck goes for, I'm like, probably goes for a similar amount. So I put in $1 million there that we would think to possibly levy the first year, and then 250,000 sort of every year after that, for the next 4 years to get us back to, hey, by the end of year 5, we're going to be ready to buy 2 new ambulances and potentially look to sell or trade in the ones that we bought, depending on what they have for mileage or whatever. That could be worked out, right? And how we want to utilize those once we own them. But it's basically, here's what we want to levy today to get us to 2 brand new ambulances and a plan to get us to 2 brand new ones in another 5 years, okay? So that leaves us then, if you take the overall, that's why this expense line suddenly jumps from 1.3 million to like 2.5, and we have a deficit of 1.4 million. So that's your 5% increases and your ambulance levy in there. And so with that, I come down below and I have equalized values. So I grabbed equalized values year over year, and I made an assumption here based kind of on where they've been, good, bad, and different, of like 9% on the increase in these equalized values year over year. That can be lowered, but that's the number that I went with, at least for this analysis, because you got to put a stake in the ground somewhere. And with that, it gives you a mill rate, and then it gives you kind of what that is per thousand. So this is, if your house is $200,000, you divide it by 1,000, and it's a factor of 200, right, times the 112.35. That is what you would expect to pay on your tax bill.
I don't think an ambulance is about $500,000.
No.
Well, okay.
Not even close. I can show you the quotes that, but I have a question.
Sure.
You know, why does the salaries regular go up $100,000 in the next year?
There's a step increase in there. I think we're looking at, I don't know, 2.5% for the step increase and a possible 2.5% COLA.
But is that 100,000 over 5 years? That seems high.
I mean,
Because if
it's
you look at
looking at, like,
2026,
depending on what that would be each year. So 2020.
just looking at salaries regular, it goes from 372 to 475.
In
Over
5
5
years.
years.
Yeah,
I mean,
with 6 employees, so that's high.
I mean, I guess if they don't want raises, we can build that into.
No, I'm just saying.
But I'm, okay, so for simplicity's sake, we had to build in increases in revenue and increases in cost. Whether those will exactly match this or not, if your crystal ball is better, by all means, please. But I had to build in something to get us to what could we possibly do? It could be less, that would be great, you know, because that means we don't have to, you know, we can make that money and again, have it for the future here. We're not building equity in this service. And we need badly some equity so that we can afford the things when they come up. The new equipment, the repairs and maintenance, anything, a new roof for the ambulance service. We're paying that out this year. What, 40,000 for a brand new roof for the ambulance service? So these are.
Money put aside though, a few years back for that did not get utilized for that purpose.
Oh.
Want supervisors to be aware of that.
But
I did
once
not
again,
see
that
that.
doesn't matter. This is where we're at. We can't, we
It's
can
split it
pass
into the
around what
past.
happened 5 years ago. It makes no difference.
Yeah.
This is where it's at now.
Thank you. I can't speak to that. I was not here. But I can speak to what I've seen on paper, and that is what you see in front of you. So whether that's a 5% increase or it's a 3% increase, we can change that. Those are just minor things. So let's not get hung up on that. So this one was assuming the 2 new ambulances. Just give me a second. The second one that you see, the numbers are basically the same, except I assumed maybe we'd lease an ambulance and we'd buy one, a brand new one. So that changes the numbers down below. If you do that and then plan again in 5 years to lease another ambulance and buy another new one, you know, depending on what you guys decide. And then same thing in levy analysis 3, just assumed, okay, let's just lease 2 of them then. If leasing's an option, let's lease 2 or newer ambulances over the next 5 years. And so at the back of your packet, you'll see all of the leasing information that I got from Barb, and I just put it into a table to show us kind of what that would cost. And I picked a year in the middle, 5 years, and said, okay, let's do it for 5 years with a 1-year delivery option. Okay, and that's what's built in to these analysis here. You could have 100 different analysis if you want. You can build all kinds of scenarios. I'm perfectly willing to share this workbook with whoever wants it, you know, and you can start building what numbers you want that look and work for your service that you're going to have. So this again is just putting some numbers to paper so you can see what it could potentially look like, and you can see how that deficit changes. Okay, so here now we're only short $1 million. So that's what we would be looking to have as our additional tax levy if we're going to do that, or what we need to get from the participants if we're going to continue forward with this. And levy, this one, so again, significantly down. You're talking about 600,000, and it stays roughly about 600,000 to 700,000 every year if you're going to lease the 2. So then, you want to ask now? Okay. Okay.
I'm hearing between what the ambulances might actually cost and some of your guesses on wages. These are probably fairly conservative guesses.
I tried to be relatively conservative. I didn't try to, you know, shoot for the world here or whatever, but I went with what I Googled and what Administrator Clements and I had kind of discussed too in terms of what some of these additional things would cost. The other thing I did build into each one of these, you'll see sort of at the bottom, this 191,000, that is currently what the non-participating municipalities are paying. So if we levied against the county-wide, we would assume to pay at least that amount back. So given that, I built that into the expense side of it. Okay, so with that, I can move on to sort of, I have 2 things in here, and each one has scenario 1, 2, and 3 listed in it. So up at the top, I just took the years, I brought over the revenue, I brought over the expenses, gave us our deficit or surplus. I even here explained kind of what it is, what I assumed, and you know, what the plan sort of is, because somebody said we should have a plan. So these are some examples of what a plan might look like. So in this case, if we were not to do an additional levy, no countywide levy, all right, we would take out that reimbursement to the towns because we wouldn't need it. So then this would be our deficit remaining, 1.2 million or 500,000 if we're going to buy 2 brand new ambulances. And then what I did down here was break it down. So I grabbed all the equalized values of all the participating municipalities. You have what they currently pay. You have their equalized values. And then I just did a simple allocation of their equalized value to come up with a percentage. And then applied that percentage over here to the amount that we were short to show us what each municipality who's participating could potentially pay under scenario 1, under scenario 2, and then also under scenario 3. And again, 2 new ambulances. Second scenario is rent 1, buy a brand new one. Third scenario is lease 2 of them. Okay. And then I go down below and I break it down just a little bit further for you, and I get you sort of what the mill rates would be and what you'd be looking at in terms of those amounts per 1,000 of value.
So James, Dana, and Andy, could you guys talk about towns' ability to if they created a district to levy outside of the levy limit. How that works, what that looks like, how much they could do.
So the state law, the onus is on the towns in the first place to provide ambulance service. It's required. But they are under the cap of percent. So whatever your levy limit is, your budget's at a 2% increase from the last year. So if your budget was 100,000 this past year, you can go to 102,000.
And your budget for just ambulance service?
I mean, if you did an ambulance service by yourself, full-time, well, there's a difference between full-time paid crew and volunteer, but a full-time paid crew would be $1 million annually. If you're volunteer, you chop off a percentage for wages and benefits. But remember, you're capped at 102,000. So municipalities other than county do not have the ability or option to levy above the tax levy cap. There was a bill that they tried putting through this past legislative year. Did that pass?
Yeah.
For EMS districts?
Yeah, so there's an exemption. There's a couple different exemptions in chapter 66 that relates to municipal funding. That's where the levy limit statute lies. So a joint district of 2 or more municipalities that co-own everything together can levy at 2% plus CPI. They have an exemption so they can go higher. Now, some years CPI is 1%, some years it's 10, right? Right now, who knows? Who knows where we're at with CPI? So there is jointly owned districts that use that exception. There's some moving parts to that, having to pass resolutions, things like that for the municipality to use it. And it's not required that all the joint owners use that every year. So it's up to each municipal body whether or not they want to use that exemption. Now, there is a new statute that just passed right at that, within the last month, maybe 6 weeks, that allows 8 or more municipalities that get service from the same place that they don't have to be joint owners, can use an exemption like that too. The catch is that all of them collectively have to do a referendum to allow that. And then they have to do the referendum every 5 years to keep it. And nobody looks like they want to do that. But so originally that was going to be a CPI plus 5%, and then it was amended to CPI plus 2. But it does allow municipalities that are not joint owners to participate in that exemption. A lot of moving parts in that one. So I don't expect that anybody in the state is going to utilize that, because once we hear referendum, everybody cringes, and it's just not something that's probably viable. But the 2% plus CPI for joint districts is being used all over the place. And that's been in the law for 10 years, maybe, for EMS. I don't know, give or take. But again, that probably is not enough money. Even 2% plus CPI, when you factor in that your inflation rate in this space is 2 to 3 times CPI, from year to year to year to year, at some point, that's not going to work anymore either.
Supervisor Nolan?
When you say CPI, I assume you're talking about consumer price index.
Yes, correct. Like the rate of inflation, Department of Revenue publishes what that number is each year for that. So that comes from the state.
Let me just add too, this is another level of complexity with the innovation grant program under Act 12. Is that if we think about what the innovation grant program is designed to encourage is transfer of service from municipal entity, city, town, village, county, to third party, whether it be other municipal entity, nonprofit, or even for-profit in some circumstances. And you measure the total value of the service that is being transferred, and then you get up to 25% of that total value every year for up to 5 years. We missed the first year, March 31 was the application deadline, but we've got 4 years remaining. I think Dan is right. The DOR is not going to award all the money this year. They don't have enough applications. But the key is the transfer of service. So if we maintain the same system, it's not going to qualify for an innovation grant. But if one of the options is that, for example, Richland Center City enters into an agreement to create the district with towns and villages. And then Richland County transfers responsibility for provision of EMS to district, that would qualify for innovation grants. So when we're talking about numbers and costs, I just want everybody to keep in mind that the added layer of complexity is trying to figure out if there's a way that we can calculate in anticipated innovation grant funding into the equation, which I think you've done, Dana, in your report.
So with that, if that was transferred to the city, the district was created, the county could still levy for the tax.
It would depend again upon what the county's levying for. If it's going to levy for countywide EMS, what do we consider that to be? Distribution of funds? Are we going to administer this? What are we going to do? Because in order to have levy above the cap, we have to say we have countywide EMS, which means we have to do something with EMS. Well, as soon as we're doing something, are we relieving ourselves of that responsibility such that we qualify for innovation grant? So that's what makes it difficult.
You get one or the other.
It is. It's confusing as heck. As a lawyer, I love this. You can laugh. That's okay. It was intended as a joke, but it's complicated. I'll give you an example. Bayfield County, Ashland County, way up north. They have a consolidated dispatch. They unfortunately completed the consolidation a year too early for innovation grant funding. So what we did is we said, okay, well, let's create a commission and let's transfer responsibility to this commission. Let's make Bayfield County employer of record. And let's say that Ashland County transferred responsibility to Bayfield County by virtue of the commission and the employer of record designation. I think it worked. They've not made a final ruling on that, but this is all new stuff. It's not like I can go back and say, well, this is what they did in 1993 to make it work. This is all brand new. But I think we have opportunity here with the innovation fund and the ability to work together to say, how do we maximize this for the benefit of everybody so that we draw down the most grant dollars as possible? And again, it's a challenge, it's complicated, but I think it's solvable.
Well, the other thing with Bayfield County too, with that joint dispatch, Bayfield County uses their EMS levy to fund a portion of their dispatch cost in that joint dispatch center.
Right.
Is that something counties can do?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like for the sheriff's
Yeah,
office, you can.
I want to say they have somewhere in the neighborhood of $200,000 in their EMS levy that goes to that dispatch, their cost share in the dispatch center.
And those numbers are not reflected in the budget numbers here. This is just the ambulance of it. That's not reflective of what could be for the dispatch center, radio systems, software, a third of what that cost is.
Yeah, I put a line in here for it,
Okay.
but did not have the amounts, because we had discussed it, but I left a placeholder depending on,
Sure.
you
Great,
know,
thank
where
you.
we want to go. Okay, so. Oh, there's a hand back there.
But does that cost for the outlying areas, I think it was like 190,000, does that include ambulance reimbursement as well? Or for new ambulances, because they're out there as well. So like, then that's big dollars. So where's that money coming from?
But in some of the, again, you gotta let yourself think a little bit, right? So if we're buying these 2 brand new ones, now if we're gonna levy and buy 2 brand new ones in 5 years, then we're also gonna plan to buy 2 more new ones. We would wanna do something with those other 2. So it is potentials there, right? That we could do this, but, or even with the leased ones, you could do that at the end of your lease, because we'll own them at that point in time too. So I
But
think
he's
there's.
not asking for Richland, he's asking
I'm
for
not,
Cass.
not for outlying, outside of Richland
And
County.
it's something
Or
that
outside of
maybe
Richland County.
potentially you could, if we levied a whole
So what you're,
district-wide.
what you're saying is at the end of the 5 years with Richland EMS having the ambulance, we could say, okay, Kaz, would you like an ambulance? Viola, do you need an ambulance?
Yes, we
Pass that on.
So we get the old junk.
I can tell you the answer.
Supervisor Frank?
So couldn't those outlying agencies, when they figure in their numbers, calculate that into the budget, what it would take for a 3-year plan to replace an ambulance or a 4-year plan? If we do a sharing of funds, that would be up to those agencies to come up with that number to calculate in what it would take to be.
And that was my question of, is it? You know, right now, I know talking to Jeff, KS, no, that's not part of it. So that small number is gonna increase a lot because ambulances cost money.
There's several counties that don't provide the service themselves, use a county levy, but own the ambulances.
Oh.
Where all the ambulances on the street are being, like, Portage County would be a really good example of this, because they contract with Stevens Point Fire Department, Plover Fire Department, and Amherst Fire Department to provide countywide. They own the ambulances. It says Portage County Ambulance on all of them. But then they're staffed by the fire departments and operated by the fire departments under contract with the county. So the county does the levy, the county has a person that's like an EMS coordinator that oversees the thing. And then each of the local municipalities are providing that service themselves.
Interesting.
But Portage County got sued. I mean, there was a really good amicus brief. I'm not gonna say that. There was a really good brief on that. Because you had one town that was saying this isn't fair. Your response time would be 43 minutes. Our response time in our neighboring jurisdiction, they're on the town on the border of the county, is 10 minutes. We're gonna contract with them. We don't want your ambulance to show up. We never want you to do this. You can't tax our residents. The Court of Appeals disagreed. Because they said basically the county board has the authority to determine what's in the public purpose or best interests of the residents of Portage County. But that's why it's complicated. The court wasn't exactly clear as to the ruling. We did win. I was happy about that, but it was not easy. Right, that's what I want.
Okay, so
The examples you used with Portage County, everything was municipally owned. How about when you throw in a 501c3 into the mix?
You could do that. I mean, they're an entity that can be contracted with. I mean, that's not uncommon to see nonprofit ambulance services. That's, municipal is probably the largest model that you see in use, but it's very common to find these private nonprofits too that are organized that way. And that would be something that would be a county board decision again of who they want to contract with potentially. Or is the money being provided to the municipalities and then the municipalities are just choosing amongst themselves how they want to spend those funds on EMS. That's the hard part in this is that there's a million ways. And as long as it's countywide and being done in some equitable way, it's probably okay. As long as it's being voted on by the county board, I would think the sky's kind of the limit within those parameters. I might be speaking for you having a lot of work.
I don't know that I say sky's the limit. I don't know if I'd say that. But I would say that as long as we have a strong fundamental reason for doing what we're doing, that is again in the best interest, we can demonstrate value or benefit to all of the residents of the county, then yes, I think it's supportable.
All right.
I'm reading the key grant details and it says core requirement. Entities must enter into an agreement to transfer an allowable service like the ambulance service to another eligible entity, another county, nonprofit, or private company. So basically, we have the choice. We could decide however we wanted to split it up. So.
Yeah.
okay, kind of finish up here, just the last one. So the last tab is what it would kind of look like with that countywide tax levy. So in which case, the only thing that changes at the top is I don't take out that reimbursement amount for the townships that are not participating up here. Because everybody would essentially be participating. So what I did is I pulled in, again, here's what everybody involved right now is currently paying. Here is what is the equalized value for the participants and the current non-participants. That gets you to the total equalized value for the county. And then what I did up here again is just took it as a percentage. This allocation is based on the entire equalized value of the county. And so again, you can see kind of how these values change when we spread this out just a little bit more. The non-participants down here, what I did is just again applied it to them just as we would with everybody else. I took out the 191 that they're currently paying that we would send back to them, and then here is our difference that would not be reimbursed if we bought 2 brand new ambulances. Again, if we lease one, buy one, and if we just leased 2 of them. And kind of went through again what the mill rate would be. And I talked to Administrator Clemens, you know, about what would happen with the difference. Right now, I just marked it as not reimbursed because that would be sort of, I guess, the plan to start with. But it's all flexible. It's just I had to build in something or show you how it would potentially look. So right now I have another tab called Munis. This little green section of the non-participants, this is how you get to the 191. So it shows you kind of what they pay right now. So if I was looking, I think somebody mentioned Viola earlier, they're paying like 3,000. I don't think I had them on my list. Oh no, I do. They're here. Okay, so they would go from their 3,000 that they're currently paying to potentially 22,000 less that amount. So you can see they'd have a considerable increase, obviously with the 2 ambulances, if we bought brand new and levied across to everybody. And then if we went to the third option, which is just to lease 2 newer ones, you would see that that 3,000 would just go up to about 9,000 or so, less than 3,000.
Where are you showing the resulting mill rates?
Down below are the mill rates here, so I show them for the participants already, and then the non-participants down here. So under option 3, Viola's mill rate would be $9.69 per 1,000. Then just multiply it by 200 and there's your value, what you would pay if you had a $200,000 house. So you just take those times your factor and you can determine what you would pay. And these are just some options that we kind of threw out there. But again, as you guys mentioned, there seems to be a lot of options and scenarios that could be presented. So
And we set it up as simply as, let's find out how much every municipality pays right at this moment. Gather all that up, figure out how to divide it across the county, and that's what we did.
Yep.
Very simple. But there are other ways that it could potentially.
there is, and we just used equalized value because that seemed like the most fair. I was trying to do it off of population, but that didn't seem, you can get to what the population, because it's gonna be on your tax bill. It's not gonna be on each individual person's gonna get a bill for the ambulance service. No, it's gonna come on your tax bill for every taxable property within the county. So those are a few scenarios. You can look through them. If you have any questions, by all means, please feel free to reach out to me and I will try to answer any questions I can about the presentation. So. Any other questions?
Any questions for Leanna? Supervisors, do you want to take a break for a little bit? Want 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 8, 10 minutes?
5.
6. Okay, we'll do 8 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes then for a break. So we're gonna go to recess right now for about 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'm gonna hear that no.
All right, we're gonna convene this meeting here, the county board back into session. And we're still on agenda item number 6, I believe. 6 and 7 both at the same time. So.
Oh, stop, that's done. I'm not doing the 6th.
I'm gonna turn the floor back over here to Administrator Clements to finish.
So I think the next question is, are there any more questions about a county-wide ambulance service, distribution of funds, anything like that, or are we ready to go on to the next item?
Just a question, what would the average property tax increase be under the equalized value for, say, for a $250,000 house?
Well, depending on which option that we chose, I think the one with the 2 ambulances, let me just grab a sheet here.
Just a ballpark figure.
Yeah, just a ballpark. I think with the 2 ambulances, we were looking at like 120, I believe it was, somewhere in that ballpark. So I think with that, you multiply that then times your 250,000, 250,000. So we times 250 and you'll get what you'll pay. Does that make sense?
Yes. What would that be?
Sure.
Just a guesstimate. Because that's the question we're gonna ask.
200,000? Isn't that the way that 112, 20 was?
It was
Per 200,000?
It was per
So
thousand.
it's $270.
So
$270.
I think that's the most common question we can ask.
It'd be about $270 with the rough estimates.
200 to 70?
270.
Yeah.
270.
Thank you.
You could also restructure the way those purchases are made too, to reduce the annual cost on
Yeah.
them. So I mean, there's a lot of moving parts in that number.
yeah, I think he mentioned we could put it under debt service, potentially. And then what would happen is that the ambulance service would just be responsible for those debt service payments for whatever length of time we took that instrument out for. So that's another potential option to not get, so if you went with the 2 ambulances that are, $1 million essentially, you could put that against your debt service and have that for a 3 to 5 year option or so to pay that, is my understanding.
And so if we were looking for a number, so if it was $100 per 200,000, whatever that number is, I'm just grabbing that number. So then we could structure it accordingly. We either buy one ambulance, lease an ambulance, do whatever. It's deciding what everybody's comfortable with for their taxes to go up. That's what the question is.
Yeah.
Supervisor McKee?
According to your spreadsheet, it would be $47.70 for 200,000. Am I reading that right?
I think that was if we leased 2 ambulances.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Director Scott?
170.
The only thing that I'd like to clarify, and I'll take 2 new ambulances, don't get me wrong, I would deeply appreciate that. But I'd like to explain how our ambulance rotation has always worked until recent years when we couldn't afford it. You purchase an ambulance every 3, or lease, it's irrelevant, except for your cost, every 3 years, which means that Unit 33 gets purchased year 1. 1, 2, 3, we purchase Unit 34. 1, 2, 3, we purchase Unit 35. So an ambulance has a life of 9 years. I am not replacing an ambulance every 3 years. That's something we don't need to do. Our mileage is not high enough that we need to do that. So when we talk about purchasing 2, we'll take it, but I don't know that it's necessary. And I don't know that that rotation has ever been explained.
And I think, and Leanna, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but we talked about doing 2 right off the bat to try to start to build some equity, to try to almost get ahead, if you may, not necessarily, but to put us in a position where we may potentially be successful.
Yes, that was sort of the idea, is to purchase the brand new ones, and with it being that you're assuming you're not gonna have as much maintenance as we've been dishing out either, so we reduce the maintenance under that assumption, so, and it's setting us up, I think, in a better place than buying sort of a refurbed or an older one, where again, you're assuming what you bought, again, if you lease a vehicle or you buy a vehicle, you have the same sort of decisions in your personal life that you're gonna have here. And, we can stretch that life out 9 years. There's no reason you can't. But the older it gets, the more maintenance it's going to need too. So that's kind of why I went towards that sort of 5-year replacement versus a 3-year or 7-year, with the idea too, that if there's low enough mileage, you could potentially turn around and resell it. You could trade it in. You can recoup some of your value versus 9 years of driving it into the ground essentially, and then having nothing you can recoup.
But you only drive the newer one as your primary, so that 9-year-old ambulance is barely ever getting driven.
Sure. So but again, this is all how you guys want to make it look. So I just came up with one potential example. You can stretch those periods out. You can change how you want to buy them, stagger the buying, you know, like she said, every, 3 years or so. Whatever you guys decide you want, we can put into an example. So.
But I think it's also about making the service sustainable. Right now, we have 3 ambulances that could truly fall apart at any moment, be non-operational at any moment. I don't want us to be in a position if we are going to have a sustainable service, and I'm the ones getting the calls saying, is somebody gonna show up at my house? We need to have 2 solid workable ambulances. We can't say, okay, we're gonna just get 1 and we're gonna hope one of our other 3 are going to make it on the road, have an accident with the first one, and then not have a second one to take out.
I mean, something like that would be completely devastating to the service. So it's just, again, making sure that if we are going to do this, we're gonna do it right out of the gates, especially if we're gonna levy against the whole county to do it.
Supervisor Nolan?
Does anyone know what the average year mileage is per unit?
I can answer that. We have 2013, we have 2015 and a 2016. Mileage on the 2013 is approximately 75,000. The other 2, I'm not as familiar with the mileage, but they're all under 100.
But how many miles do you put on per year?
About 20, 25
On each truck?
on each truck.
Supervisor Carroll?
I just want to make sure we remember that this letter that was sent to us on March 30th from kind of a group of the townships, municipalities, that will keep that front center as part of our decision. I'll admit, I'm confused at all those scenarios and options out there. I just hope that we can come up with something that takes advantage of the information grant, but still addresses their preferences.
And I think, and these 3 can correct me if I'm wrong, we can't have a countywide tax levy, us continuing to run the service, and get the innovation grant.
The only but I would throw in there is if we assume responsibility from the municipalities and they transfer responsibility to us, then we may be able to contract with the municipalities that we would receive some of the grant funding.
But then Lone Rock has, Viola would have to transfer responsibility to us, or we could just take it through a countywide service.
That gets a little complicated.
They would have to transfer the service for the area in the county. They wouldn't necessarily have to transfer the service for the area outside the county.
Right.
And that would become quite difficult operationally speaking. I think on paper you could probably work it out, but man, trying to get it to the operation side and dispatch trying to figure it out, nightmare. But it would be plausible to at least say, is this an option we could pursue?
But I mean, honestly, that's the challenge, is how do we maximize the innovation grant funding possibility and maintain the service? That's a challenge.
Right.
How do we maximize the grant and not maintain the service? That's a lot easier. And I'm not suggesting that's the right way. I'm just saying that you can see now some of the complications with that.
And I want to say, with the municipality letter and wanting to keep the service local and have local control, they do have the option through creation of a district to take over the service and not have it be a county responsibility. And they would be able to get the innovation grant.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, by transfer to the district, yes.
So I guess.
But, yeah, that is an option.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So is the option there? Yes, absolutely. I would tell you, based on the report and from the interviews that we had with the different entities, they all were like, yeah, it'd be nice to have local control and make this. But once we sat down and said, who's gonna be responsible for writing the checks and the payroll and taking care of insurance and this and that, they're like, that's a lot more difficult. And municipalities were in agreement that it would be very tough for them to do. And therefore they felt it would be better either through district run or the county or something along those lines. So just the operationals component was what was.
Can we have that presentation so we're all on the same page?
So, yeah, we can certainly, if you're ready to move on.
Supervisor Frank's got a question.
You answered it already, thank you.
What happens when that innovation grant ends? What happens then? How many years does that go for?
5 years, and so you got 4 years left on it.
Right, but
When it
after
ends,
you receive that grant money, what happens after that?
nothing. Nothing. There are certain limitations. Your costs can't exceed 15% of prior year and so on. So there are limitations to what you have to say to the state. Yes, this is what we're going to do. And if, when they go back and look, it's in excess of 115, they can reduce the next year's grant. So they can do that. But then once the program's done, it's done. And there's no clawback feature or anything like that. You're just kind of on your own at that point.
And how do they fund the service without the innovation grant?
They being county or district or others, that's a great question.
And so, and I guess I'll jump in. I know like through Simon's, we had talked about the innovation grant. And some of the things we talked about is that would help with the capital piece of it. So you could take the innovation grant fund, use that as helping to build your capital and continuing to use your current funds for operation. But you're right, it would be a way just to kind of help you get through, maybe make other plans. Maybe if you had a district, start to build that, what your base rate is and starting to increase that levy and outside the levy.
Supervisor Welty?
I have some concerns about how we prioritize what we want to accomplish. And what I'm concerned about is I'm hearing that there may be a tendency to prioritize the innovation grant funding over what actually is required or needed to provide a stable ambulance service in Richland County. I think we should really strongly consider prioritizing which aspect of an ambulance service is most important to the county. And is it the innovation grant or is it having a stable ambulance service that's supported?
Any other questions? Tiffany?
I remember it being stated at one of our other meetings that grant is not a sustainable income. So relying on the innovation grant can't do that because that's not a sustainable income to where levying that is sustainable.
That's why I think at this point, it'd be good to move to the models. We could take a look at them and then come back to this. But
Yes.
Being aware, please, that we've been down the grant road before and sometimes it's a muddy road. And I don't think we should depend on it too much.
Yeah, so I would like to comment back just for a second before we get into these other ones. I was going around the state with the Wisconsin Towns Association and presenting on the EMS in general. Just a lot of people just had questions about EMS, didn't know about EMS. Some people wanted to know what the letters EMS stood for. So some of it was just the generic, what are we? What do we do? And then from there, we went into what the disasters are in many parts of the state with EMS either having delayed responses of 30 minutes to 45 minutes or not at all. In 1 year, we had 10 documented entities that never showed up to a 911 call. You guys don't want that. That's a huge liability issue, right?
It is.
So we don't want that. The issue is what's the viable, sustainable solution. We then slid into the discussion of innovation grant. And I understand what you're saying is you definitely don't want to rely on the innovation grant to sustain anything. It's not. We already know it's limited at 5 years. Now it's going to be 4 years. I think what we're saying, though, is you already have a projected deficit, right? It's $1 million. You're going to have to figure out ways. I think there's more than one way. One of the ways is to create or to have the tax levy where you can exceed it at the county level. What the grant is going to do is help you buy that down over the next 4 years. So instead of whatever it is, 1.1 million, you might only have to levy 900,000. So you're still going to have to levy. You're still going to have that expense, that cost. The innovation grant is just going to cause that to be lesser for the next 4 years. It's just it's going to be a buffer of what the true costs are going to be. What I finished that presentation with across the state, we did 15 times across the state, was contact your legislators in Madison and say, thanks for the attempt, but the innovation grant is the most horrible way to do business. The state should have never done it, and they certainly shouldn't have run it through DOR. You could get more bang for your buck if they would have given a $100,000 check to every fire department and ambulance service in the entire state. It would just keep going for the next 100 years. So I agree with you. It's not there, but that's where all of us need to be calling up to say, recognize that there was a need, right? You know, you did it. You set up the innovation grant. You knew that was it. They knew fire and EMS was in law enforcement was a priority because they have it right in the parameters of the grant application. But this is not the way to do business. So that's my answer back to everybody, is to say, take advantage, you know, whether we like it or not, somebody's going to get $300 million. It's out there. It's been allocated. It's sitting in an account. It will get spent somewhere. We're just encouraging, but you guys should be one of the entities. You potentially have that ability to get that, buy down what some of your tax levy is going to be, and then say between now and 5 years from now, please make an effort to just get the money directly to fire and EMS. So that's what the ultimate goal is. Let's get stabilized funding for public safety. That's what we need. So with that, what do we do for the next 4 to 5 years? You're looking at what's called a viable, sustainable. We keep hearing it's viable and sustainable, meaning we need it to work. We want it to work more than just 30, 60, 90 days, because you guys don't want to keep coming back every year to try to resolve the same problem. You want it to be workable for 5, 7, 10 years. And so when we went through the options, there are more. We only listed 4. There's obviously more. We could come around the table and say, but what about this? What about this? Yes, but we went through some parameters of what's viable, what's sustainable. I knocked out many of them. We also went through what we heard from the municipalities on what they thought they could potentially handle. They knew that they were responsible by law to provide the service, so it's incumbent on them to say, what are we going to do? They also know that the county is involved today, not because they have to, but because there's that partnership to work together. So what do you do to kind of make all that work? And you add in the icing on the cake of, can we get 150,000 from the state every year for the next couple of years? Right? So that's all the parameters that we looked at. So with that, option 1 then got titled self-run ambulance service. So what is that? Municipalities that are currently entities that are part of Richland County Ambulance Service, they would get together, create a memorandum of understanding or intergovernmental agreement, and they would create an EMS district. Okay, they would create that as district. There was some discussion on whether that's, aren't we that now because we're Richland County Ambulance Service? They are not an official district recognized under Chapter 66. They are not. So you would have to create that. That's one of the things that we'll continue to help working on. We don't have that finished yet because we're not sure what you guys are going to decide to do here, but we can certainly help with the creation of the draft governmental agreement for the municipalities. So they're going to be self-run. You see the list of the pros and cons. I don't know if you want to get into the details. You were able to read through them. But so anyways, that's option 1. Option 2 then, same concept. The municipalities are still running the show. They're the ones that have created the intergovernmental agreement between all the towns. They're going to create the district, but instead of them running the show, them being in charge and writing the checks and making sure there's insurance and all that, hiring, firing, service director and all that, they would then just contract with a third-party entity. And that third-party entity could be, it's generic in who it could be, right? I heard a lot of different people had opinions of who that was. It was purposely left generic because that would be their option. The recommendation is you could put out a request for proposal or an RFP to say, here's what we want. We want this and this and this and this and this. The interested entities would reply back to that and say, here's what we can provide, and here's the cost that we would charge you for that service. Okay, so again, pros and cons are listed for that third-party service. Next option, that's with the municipalities maintaining the district. They would be on the board. They'd have a more of a say in the operations or the contract negotiations. The third option then switches the focus from the municipalities basically creating that district, focusing it over to the county. This would be that county-run service. So this was named consolidation approach because we borrowed the language from a memo that was put out a few years back. Not everybody agrees with the wording of the memo, but it's other than the one sentence in the entire law that says what countywide is, it's one memo that's been put out that's really not been contested yet. It's been described from the DOR's perspective on what they allow as the definition of a countywide. So they gave several examples. So the one thought would be the consolidation approach. And this is where the county is going to continue to run the service. They're going to continue to run Richland County ambulance service. They're going to be the provider across the county. They're going to provide that service to all the municipalities within the county. So it extends it beyond just where the current Richland County EMS is to everybody. Why would you do that then? The logical reason on that is it does allow the county to exceed the 2% tax levy limit. I understand, I mean, we've been presenting to other entities and some of them said, we have no intention of exceeding the tax levy limit. And that's your prerogative or to determine you don't want to. But with the numbers presented tonight, you see that there's $1 million that has to come from somewhere. So some entities have said, we're not going to do that. Other entities have said, okay, with education and understanding of the growth and what we're going to get, we can see the benefits of county-run service, countywide service that is able to exceed the tax levy limit. So again, pros and cons are listed. I'm glad to go through the pros and cons, but I know that's in your books. Go ahead.
What happens to the EMS services around the outlying if it goes this way?
You have services that are coming into the county providing that service. It takes communication and building relationships and stuff, but the county would then work with all the towns and say, for the best service to be provided to all the citizens within the county, this is the decision made by the elected officials. We're going to become a countywide service and provide that service back. And we've talked about what some of the positives and negatives are going to be. You're going to provide service to that area. You're going to tax for it, and depending on which option you come up with, you potentially are giving them back some funds that they don't, that they hope that they as a town will now have, that they didn't have originally. You're providing them with potentially, you're at the AEMT level now, which is great. That's fantastic. You have the potential of going to a higher level of paramedic service. You could offer that as an option as well. And so the entity that is providing service in this area would then only be providing service wherever they're based out of. So if they're based, what's the name? So Cazenovia would then be in Cazenovia and whatever other towns that they are contracted with outside the county. You can work with them and say, we still want to have a mutual aid agreement between Richland County and Cazenovia, so that if we need each other's help, you come to our help when we ask for it, we come to your help when you ask for it.
So the outlyings would be compensated for that, this program?
That's an option. That is an option. So it's all part of the negotiation. It's all part of the negotiation.
Right, so what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say, this is what I hear, is that Casanova no longer has to provide service in Richland County. They can keep providing service outside the county, but they no longer provide service in Richland County.
Correct.
And neither would Muscadet, and neither would Blue River. So the county, then all of a sudden, that $1 million ain't enough. That's the first con, because now you got 8 outlying services that are doing this, or 10, whatever it is. Okay, I just want to make sure that's what I see.
And without that money, Blue River would not, 60% of our district.
Right.
So Blue River would not sustain itself if we were not reimbursed from the countywide tax levy.
But
So
you're
several cons for sure on that.
not saying that they wouldn't be that the county wouldn't reimburse the outlying areas.
It's an option.
It's an option.
Yeah.
It's an option.
You can't
In this option right here, the way I hear it is, Richland County is gonna create its own ambulance service to cover the whole county.
Right.
The outliers would not, so Blue River would not get any money because there's no reason for it, because Richland County is covering the whole county. Is that, I'm hearing this.
That would be an option 3. Option 3.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing, okay.
Unless we go into an agreement.
That's not what this option is. This option is the county's gonna do the whole county. That's what this option is. I'm not saying there isn't that option. What I'm saying is that's what this option is, just to clarify, because I wanted to make sure I was clear. So I criticize, I'm just saying everybody needs to understand what.
We're one slide ahead. So option 3, yes, I saw the confusion.
That
Yes.
doesn't make sense for what's on the
So
slide.
option 3 is the consolidation approach. That's what Supervisor Hui is suggesting. If you go to option, no, that's.
Not at all. What I'm stating it is.
If you go to option 4, take care of most of those concerns, because the distributed approach then is the county really becomes the administrator. They become the administrator, and the business or the operations is done out in the county, right? So you have what is the Richland County Ambulance Service, which could be a district or some other configuration. The county is then contracted as Novia, Muscadet, and whatever else, and they're working to say, we're contracting with you to guarantee that there'll be coverage in our communities. We're taxing everybody and we can, you don't have to, but you can exceed the tax levy limit to cover all those costs. And you redistribute it out to all those entities. That way you keep Blue River, Muscadet, and whoever else, Casanova, intact. You're working together with them. You can then work together as far as training and education, potentially offering a higher level of care, service, and so on. So with all that, you gotta, those are 4. Those are the 4 that we felt were the most viable, most sustainable for this group to decide on. There are other variations and what ifs and all that. We can go down that path. From that, then, what's the recommendation, right? That's the tough one. That's the one I'll get nailed to the wall. That's what I'm. Actually, I was going to have you. Yeah, he's moving back. So, what do you recommend? Because, man, whichever one I choose, somebody's going to start yelling at me for that, which is okay. From what we heard from the study, the first 2 options, the municipalities did want to participate, and they were like, they support. I will tell you, the municipalities support EMS. They really want to see EMS. They want to see it grow. They love the people that are on the ambulance service. I didn't hear anything negative in those areas, just so everybody understands that, okay? But they wanted to make sure that there was a viable, sustainable approach. They did not feel that the first 2 options were, to them, viable and sustainable from the representatives that I talked with. Okay? So that threw out the first option 1, option 2, and that's because it was the municipalities that were basically running the show. They just lots of reasons that we talked about. So that leaves options 3 and 4. Option 3, you guys already answered that. You came up with cons just here at the table. And so, not just by default, but through the process, number 4 makes sense, which is where the county is going to become more the administrator of the ambulance. They're going to be providing for a tax levy throughout the year. They can be responsible for that, redistributing those funds, and then deciding who's going to be the ambulance service for Richland County, what is currently the Richland County Ambulance Service. That could be a district that's created, that could be contracted through a third-party entity. And again, the suggestion is, a lot of times people are nervous when they hear that. They're like, well, what? We don't have no control once that's done. I'm like, well, you create the RFP, the request for a proposal. You say, we expect this and this and this and this and this. You say, we want 1 ambulance, we want 2 ambulances, we want 20 ambulances, whatever it is that you want, you write that out, you write the parameters. I've seen contracts where they write out, we want guaranteed response times, out the door of 90 seconds or less and on-scene time of 5 minutes. It's a little difficult to do in Richland County, but you can put the parameters that you want. They respond back to say, we can do this, 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 and this, and here's the cost. You then pick, you pick those, you pick the entity that you think will best suit you. You go into negotiations with them, come up with the final cost, and then you can, sign a dotted line. You can have evaluations on a quarterly basis, on 6-month basis. You can have your contract go 3 years, 5 years. I know one entity that actually has 10-year contracts, if you can believe that. I was shocked when I saw it, right? That's not common. But it was good for both. The ambulance service knew what they were getting for 10 years. They were guaranteed that income, and the municipalities knew that they were getting that for 10 years. So they didn't have to write another contract for 10 years. So the recommendation then is consolidated approach, which is detailed as option number 4.
So one thing, just as an FYI for you, we have put out an RFP. They are all due next week. And so next week we should have a better idea, because I know that was a question that a lot of board members had, was how do we know what's a better option as far as cost? So we will have those costs next week if we receive bids.
Supervisor Welty?
So just to clarify, in option 4, the distributed approach, what is the ultimate impact to our current Richland County ambulance service? Is it a requirement that it no longer exists, or can it continue to operate and be one of the contracted services?
That's up to the county board to decide.
But it doesn't predicate, it doesn't absolutely require that we do away with the current service, is that correct?
There's no requirement that you do away with the current service. This is just from best standards and best practices. The suggestion was to put out an RFP to see who answers it and find out what they say what they're capable of doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I agree that it makes sense to at least evaluate that option. I just want to clarify, because there's been some misunderstanding that I've heard and communicated in the community, that this option 4 distributed approach requires the outsourcing of the ambulance service, and I don't believe
it does not. No.
It does not. Okay. Yeah.
Supervisor Carroll?
Have you read the letter that was the unified recommendation from the municipalities?
Yes.
Which of those options does that most closely resemble? I'm trying to.
I thought it was supposed to be number 4. I thought number 4 was what they were without. I mean, they put that out before the draft report came out, so they didn't necessarily know the wording that we had written. But if you take a look at what they're writing and compare it to what's in what we're saying is the distributed approach option 4, it marries up pretty accurately.
Could we come up with our own proposal? Could Richland County come up with their own? Yeah, we're looking for, other people. Could we make up our own? And
yes.
John?
Just the point, the third party, the border with Tri-State in Europa, that Viola does.
approximately 20% of our calls are made up of going to Tri-State's service area to back them up because they only have one ambulance. Even though originally the contract read for two, but I think that contract is no longer. About 20% of all of our ambulance calls go into the third party area that Richland County uses for the majority of their county. The Farges, I think it's 9% of their calls go there. And Reestown has a percentage of their calls that go there as well. So that would be one thing that if you are looking at a third party, you're gonna want to ensure that your contract is well enough written that you don't run into that, because I don't know how As and Lone Rock and the other outlying areas are, but we'd be awful hard pressed to go on another 20% calls to back up another service besides the ones we already are.
But I do want to share that I gathered the data from the sheriff's department. And although it's a high percentage of your calls, only 3.2% of the calls that Tri-State gets, they request mutual aid. And so based on the large service location that they provide services to, based on having just one ambulance, and the large number of calls they're getting, only 3.2% of their calls they're requesting mutual aid.
Any other thing for agenda items?
Mr. Chair.
So our last thing that we just had is our next steps is the vote on May 19th. At that meeting, you will know and be provided with the quotes from the bids that we receive. If we receive any bids, we have not received any yet. I have had 3 different entities reach out with questions, and they have shared that they do intend to submit a bid. So again, it's just a reminder that the 2 things that we need to vote on will be to determine if the county will continue to run the service. And the second thing is to determine if we will levy outside of the levy limit to fund countywide emergency medical services.
When are those reports due, or those RFPs due?
Monday, I believe at either noon or 4.
Next one. Thank you.
Noon.
Thank you, Scott.
Larry?
I'm just wondering about the next steps on the, if we have the proposals from the third party entity and we have the analysis that our person did tonight, do we need another public meeting and get that out there and get feedback?
So
In terms of,
plan is executive and finance will open the bids. And that will be the public meeting where the bids will be opened and reviewed by the committee. Is that what you're asking about?
yeah, so that will be posted and everybody in the room will know.
Yeah.
Okay.
The bids won't be in the packet because they'll be opened at the meeting. But the meeting agenda will be posted hopefully tomorrow.
So I'm just thinking about Steve's question about that letter. There was a lot of work put into that letter. And there was consensus that came out of that letter. So it'd be helpful to continue that movement.
Mr. Chair.
Lloyd?
Hi, Floyd Bartle from Cherubino Vista. In regards to the countywide levy letter of support, I do have a disclaimer, and I want it on the record that the town of Buena Vista is on that letter in support of that. That is incorrect. We are not in support of a countywide levy.
So what he shared is that on the letter that the municipalities turned in, Buena Vista was listed as one of the supporting towns. He's saying that he is not in support of that, that was incorrectly added to the letter.
Got anything else to discuss for agenda for 6 and 7? So I want to make sure that we clear that Richland County can submit something. Somebody could for Richland County. For our
Through the
RFP.
RFP, the RFP is open to anyone from the public to be able to respond back to, yes.
But I want to be clear, you don't have to accept any of the RFPs. So we don't necessarily need to put our own together today. We look at the RFPs, Administrator, jump in if I disagree, if you disagree. We look at the RFPs. If we think we can then do it better, we just do it.
Because we will compare the RFPs with our current service.
Correct.
It's not like a bid.
That makes sense. You guys have the rights in the matter.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
They do have, so you would have the rights if you don't, you compare it to what you're doing now and you don't like going.
Mhm.
the rate check.
Supervisor Williamson?
Is there a possibility that we continue one more year with the current contract? To give us more time, instead of feel like we're, kind of like we were, when was that? The end of the year? That's just, I'm asking if that's a possibility.
From my opinion, the board can do whatever they choose. I have three concerns with doing that. First one is, we need to start negotiating a union contract. And so we are going to spend a lot of money negotiating a union contract. And if we're not going to continue the service, then it's money that's wasted. Number two, we have an interim service director. And we have had the interim service director for almost a year now. And her original commitment was for 3 months. And we've kind of put it off and put it off. So I hate to go hire a new service director for a 1.5 year time period. And my third concern is we invested $8,000 last year trying to negotiate a contract. We know we're going to need more from the municipalities next year, just based off of Leanna. We know we need a new ambulance, so that's actually a fourth thing. So I do worry the more we put this off, the more challenges that we're going to have and the more money that is going to be misspent.
Kevin first, then Kevin?
Just for verification, let's say we go with the 2.5 levy tax. Richland County is the administrator. Do we have the personnel and software in place that can get the AR and the APs?
So
Is there a department head already?
you mean if we did billing internally?
Right.
We would have to hire a full-time billing person to do the billing internally. Challenges with that, if you have just one biller, if they have a baby, get sick, quit, then you're gonna have that delay in billing. And so I think those are some challenges. Now, if we kept the service long-term, Leanna and I have talked about, do we almost create a billing unit and pull staff from HHS, pull staff from Pine Valley, and have a couple of countywide dedicated billers? That is something that we could explore in the future if we kept the service in-house.
Okay, but if we go with the 2.5, I'm just throwing a number out there. All the counties chip in. Does that go through the finance department?
When you're, so if you're saying if the municipalities continue to contribute,
Right.
I guess that's a question I would ask these three here is, can we have the can we do a countywide and also bill the municipalities? Can we do a countywide levy outside the levy limit, a certain amount, and then the remaining funds that are needed, would the municipalities be required to cover that difference?
Well, theoretically, yeah, I mean, you could do that. It's a matter of just moving dollars back and forth and figuring out how the equation works with a countywide tax levy, because you're gonna have elements of the county that aren't reliant upon our countywide service. So we have to pay them money or support them somehow. And other elements of the county that will be higher users that would theoretically owe the county money for the countywide service. So yeah, you could work that out in an agreement situation. I still maintain the countywide levy, the countywide service.
Yes. It would be easier to do what do we predict our next year's expenses to be? Offset that with what we predict the income to be, and you go conservative, all the numbers, whatever that remaining amount is what you're going to drop in. That's the easiest plan across the board.
I think his question is if you do the county levy, is somebody within finance or somebody within the county already here to distribute that, know what, you're gonna run it through your normal AR AP process within the clerk's office and within finance, I think is what Mr. Nolan's question is. Yes, the number's already gonna be established, they'll run it through their normal financial processes for paying bills and receiving funds from
Well,
So Supervisor, just so you know, Mr. Even used to be our county treasurer. You have an understanding of context here of what gotta go. So Supervisor Frank?
Thank you. So I'd like to add a fifth item to the concern that administrator. That is, it's May. If we're gonna do a tax levy, that doesn't happen overnight. We need to make that decision. We need to start moving it forward because it's not gonna happen overnight. And included in the tax levy, if we go that way, should be included the extra expenses it's gonna take to, if we handle that, if we're gonna do the AR and the AP, and that's gonna add in software, all those costs should be figured in and added into that levy process. That should not be an extra added burden onto the staff.
And I think if we know by May 19th, then we can intensively start working with Mr. Small, work with Dana to really try to hammer out what is this countywide tax levy going to look like? How much is it going to be? How are we going to distribute and be able to bring proposals back to?
Anything later than that, it's too late.
I would agree. And it's too late if we decide not to do a countywide tax levy. We then have 12 municipalities that are hoping that we do that, banking on the fact that we do it. And if we're not going to, they're going to have to pivot and look at their budgets and see how that's going to be funded.
If we don't give direction, we're the error then.
Supervisor Collins Johnsford?
Yeah, I just wondered, is there a deadline on the innovation grant? I mean, how much are we gonna get this year?
Zero, you'll get nothing this year. The application deadline was March 31st.
Oh,
But I think that they're going to have money left. I mean, they said if we have extra money, we'll have another round of grants next year. They'll have money. They're not gonna
so we're
spend
not
it.
even seeing it till next year.
We don't
If
know.
if
We
we
don't
get any of it.
we apply.
Supervisor McKee?
But that grant be used for to transfer to a countywide EMS? Because that's gonna cost money.
No. I don't think so, because what are we transferring services to? Right now, we run an ambulance service and we're just talking about expansion of an existing service. We're not transferring responsibility. So I think on that very simple premise, I don't think we qualify for an innovation grant.
If I could clarify that a little bit, there are parameters that allow you to include it. However, what's going to happen is the part that Richland County was responsible for won't get counted as part of the base.
The municipalities then would be able to.
Yes, they would be able to claim it and then have it back. So there would be a potential grant, but not to the full extent that the entire county was involved. And where you'd want to capitalize that on is volunteers, right? For whatever, I mean, in a good way, there's an extra provision in here for volunteer fire, volunteer EMS, where they, even though you had volunteers, they're allowing you to say, how many hours of volunteerism did you do? And we came up with a brilliant suggestion of one volunteer ambulance service is about 17,520 hours, right? That's what it is. It's two people, 24 hours a day on call.
What if we're not providing that level? And I have no volunteers, we're all paid.
Last year,
Oh,
there's still a formula.
okay, we were all paid.
But, okay, my response back is they have come up with a Bureau of Labor amounts. So we can work on those. I will get those numbers to whomever. If you paid less than what that is, it would be the difference between what the DOR is going to allow for Richland County and what you paid. So I don't know what, you have one, give me one number where you're paid something.
$20 per hour.
Per hour, per call?
Per call.
Per call.
But.
So we can work that out.
Volunteer on 24/7. They're on a very limited.
It doesn't. We're working with what the parameters of what the DOR gave for being able to enhance what the grant would be to services.
Okay.
And so we will run it through we'll run it through the attorney's office, we'll run it through the administrator's office. We will make sure that they're very comfortable with it. They can, I mean, I gave the numbers to the DOR in the report. In talking to the DOR, they will allow as much flexibility as possible to bump up those numbers for the volunteer hours as much as possible. And we're talking over $100,000 then addition. But that's to the side of what the base would be. Is what you were saying was in order, you'd have to, if you want to get everybody's numbers together, you would have to create a new separate entity.
Any further discussion from county supervisors? Any other questions? Are we comfortable with moving on from agenda items 6 and 7 and going on to 8?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna open the floor up for public comment on agenda item number 8. The county does have some rules and you will get 3 minutes to talk. We do have 2 public comments right now. I got one from Mrs. Barbara Scott and the second one from Daryl Slama of Casanova Fire Department. So, Barb?
Just the things that I had listening tonight, and I want to add, waiting past May, May is mental health month. I have staff that putting them through another year of this is not good for their mental health. They are responding, they're showing up, and they're amazing, but that's a big ask for anybody. We've done this for a year now. I don't think it would be fair to ask them to do it another year. That's not a good use of our stewardship to our employees. So I really beg the board not make a decision one way or another, please. The other comments that I have regarding our billing company, I had a discussion with them. They asked us not to write off old accounts. They are willing to work them. They will continue to use TRIP. There is a write-off. As they said, Medicare, Medicaid, insurance company agreements that we have, we're gonna write that amount off. But they said, stop writing off your old stuff because we want to still work it. If we write it off, they can't work it. We are transitioning all of our old accounts from Unified over to EMSMC to be working the collection side. So those are the things that they asked me to relay, and they're willing to come to a board meeting and talk to you about that at any point in time. The ambulances, there was a question about buying them out at the end of the term. The leasing only provides financing. We will still actually own those ambulances at the end of the lease term. It's a weird verbiage, but talking to the leasing company, they provide just the financing, not the actual rig. And the last thing, when I look at what the billing company has billed in the last 30 days compared to our previous company, they are billing almost a third again of what we were getting from our other company. They're making sure that the bills are maximized. That doesn't necessarily increase our revenues, but it does give us the opportunity to increase our revenues. Those are the things that I have to say, other than as a resident, I live here, I pay my taxes. I want to know an ambulance will respond, and I have full faith the county board will ensure that. And I want to make sure that it's in a timely fashion. My mom lives here. I would hate to think of her waiting. And I think that any of the providers can do that, but we have to really all work together. That's all I have.
Yeah. Thank you, Barb. Fire Chief Slama, Casanova Fire.
Been a long time. It said that started in '69. I was in that group back when all we needed was advanced first aid, if you remember.
Yes.
And we transported. And we have a fire district that has worked very well for us. Around us, Reedsburg, got a fire district, seems to work well for them. Very little discussion. Our district, we have all or parts of 5 townships and 1 village. I'm sorry, we're poor. We don't pay anything like we. I was also 24 years with the Fort McCoy Fire Department, and I instituted the ambulance there. We also service parts of Sauk County, and we have a number of times backed up Center Ambulance, Reedsburg Ambulance, Moneywalk Ambulance with a volunteer department. I understand that legally you can access whatever the board decides. Morally, I like our ambulance service the way it is as a district. We are local, we've handled it all these years. And for us, I think a district works very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I'll open the floor up just for a little bit. Is there any other public comment that did not have a chance to field? Darren?
Darren Mathis, Village Viola President. Some of the comments that was made stated that $3,000 is what the village put towards the ambulance. Last 5 years, spent $3,500 in the budget. The village has donated. On top of that, we donate all the diesel fuel so that both ambulances running out of Viola. We pay all the water, sewer, electric rates for the building that the ambulances are housed in. Between 12 and 15,000 a year is what the village board puts in our budget as a donation. We're a nonprofit. We're self-owned. We're not owned by the village or anybody else. We do serve, the ambulance does serve all of Forest, all of Sylvan, all of Bloom, part of Marshall. That's Vernon County side though, on a tax basis. So I know Administrator Clemens called and asked what they done. They make a donation to us. They aren't paying us that amount. So when you go on tax levy basis, what that land is laying in that area, the tax basis, say 2.5, or whether it's $9 per pound of pork with my farm lines in, it's a lot more dollars. What you were saying you were gonna donate to the Kick and Rescue Squad on your tax basis, I pay more than that than what the county is gonna donate, just my portion of the taxes. So I hope the board, when you get down and you calculate this out, we need ambulance services. Right now, the county is served by 8 ambulances. If you go to a county-wide, you're gonna be served by 2. There's no way you can make that 25-minute from Richland Center clear to Viola. We need the outlying districts to be part of it. But how you base your revenue payment is very important, whether you do it on a per capita head basis or you do it on equalized valuation, tax valuation. It's equal across the whole area for all the service sectors, your revenues, equally supported. So that's my opinion on what's going on and to be done by May 19th. There's a lot of questions here that still need to be answered before I think justifiably you can make the right alternative decision. That's just 2 weeks away.
All right, thanks, Darren. I'll open the floor up just for a couple more comments here. John?
One other thing that I think that being missed, if you go to a countywide ambulance service and the county takes over for providing ambulance service to the outlying areas as well, is in the cases of natural disasters. Right now, we have a source of manpower that is trained, and you would lose that because, and I can't talk for anybody else because I am resigning this year after 53 years. But I would hate to see that type of resource be lost because 2 ambulance crews isn't going to be able to provide it in case of a natural disaster. And no one's going to go through the training if they're not utilizing it on a regular basis.
Thanks. Anna?
Thank you. Each one of you, I think, was talking about concerns, and that's from option number 3. Option number 3 is the countywide service where the county owns everything, runs everything, does everything. And so I think majority of people, and that's what Supervisor Cooley is bringing up, probably not the best option is 3. Option number 4 answers all those questions in the positive sense. Option 4 says we're still going to maintain in whatever way, RFP or different service or the same service for what is already listed on the map as Richland County EMS. And then they contract with the existing entities already providing service. So all the surrounding services in Richland County remain intact. They stay intact. They're still there. They're still providing service. But because they have a contract with you saying, we're going to contract with Casanova to say you are definitely providing this area of service. You're definitely providing it for Casanova, Mescaday, wherever else. And we're going to maintain this. So option 4 recognizes that, allows for that, it formalizes it, and it gives you the option to potentially exceed the tax levy limit if that's what the board wants to do. So based on all the comments, it sounds like everybody's in agreement. Option 3 has some issues with it that most people don't want. Option 4 addresses all those issues and leaves you with a positive outcome.
Thank you. All right, it's 9 o'clock. Agenda item number 8 is completed. Any other comments from county board supervisors on our topics tonight? Any other questions? Okay. Items correspondence. Hey, Miranda?
I have not received any insurance.
Wonderful. Looking for a motion for agenda item number 10. Motion by Secretary for adjournment, seconded by Supervisor Meyer. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
I'm sure.